Chapter 997. No, definitely not. Yin Liang promised after hearing Tang Zheng's words. Tang Zheng glanced at him and asked, "Is your promise useful?" Yin Liang's cheeks flushed red. He stammered, "The school told me to tell you that there won't be any more unpleasant incidents." Tang Zheng waved his hand and said, "There's no need to talk about this anymore." Yin Liang's face turned pale when he realized that he was about to return empty-handed. He looked at Qi Shaowen with pleading eyes. The school had given him an ultimatum. If he could not persuade Tang Zheng to return to school, his career as a tutor would be over. He could forget about getting promoted in the future. That was why Yin Liang went to ask Qi Shaowen for help. Qi Shaowen was kind on the outside but soft on the inside. He was persuaded when he saw Yin Liang's pitiful face with snot and tears. Of course, Qi Shaowen also thought that university life was very important. He felt that it was a pity to see Tang Zheng leave school, so he agreed to talk to him. "Tang Zheng, you don't have to rush to answer. Think about it first. There's still a few days before school starts. You can tell us then," said Qi Shaowen. Looking at his eager eyes, Tang Zheng swallowed back the words of rejection. Since Professor Qi had already said so, then he would drag it out for a few days. So he nodded and said, "Okay, I'll reply to you after a while." "Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll wait for your good news." Yin Liang was overjoyed and moved to tears. This was the first step in a long journey. As long as he did not reject him outright, it meant that there was still a chance. Yin Liang could almost see a bright future waving at him. "Then I'll take my leave. I found a few nice antiques recently. Come and have a look when you have time," said Qi Shaowen. "Stay for lunch." "No, next time." Qi Shaowen knew that Tang Zheng and Yin Liang did not get along. The atmosphere was not harmonious. Tang Zheng walked them to the door and waved goodbye. Yin Liang kept nodding and bowing, showing a flattered look. "If you go back to school, then we'll be classmates again." Yi Dingdang walked out and joked, "Don't you want to be my classmate? Suit yourself." Yi Dingdang shrugged and said nonchalantly, "I'm just worried about those fresh flowers in school. If you go back, who knows who will fall into your evil clutches." Cough, cough. Tang Zheng coughed awkwardly. Was he such a playboy? He rubbed his nose resentfully and didn't continue the conversation. "With your ability, there's no need for you to go to school at all. Your business is so big, you can definitely do something. Haven't you seen how many founders of famous companies in the world are dropouts? Isn't that cool?" And said, her study abroad was over. She didn't want Tang Zheng to go back to school. It would be a disaster for her if he stayed with Yi Dingdang every day. Yi Dingdang's almond-shaped eyes widened as she retorted, "Who said that university is useless? You don't know how much his grandfather wants him to go to school." Tang Zheng's face stiffened. His heart was sad. He didn't have time to tell his grandfather about his expulsion. Yi Dingdang was right. His grandfather really wanted him to finish university. This had been his wish for many years. If he told his grandfather about his expulsion, his grandfather would take Tang Zheng's feelings into consideration and wouldn't say anything. However, he would be very disappointed in his heart. Thinking of this, Tang Zheng felt how selfish he was. He only considered his own feelings and ignored his grandfather's wishes. "I haven't seen my grandfather in a long time. I want to go to the island. Moreover, school is about to start, so I need to bring Shur and the others back." "You want to go to the island? I'll go with you. I haven't been there before." Yi Dingdang immediately volunteered. "I'll also go," and said, not to be outdone, "None of you can go. I'll go alone, and we'll be back soon. Moreover, it will be in a way that you will never expect." Tang Zheng said mysteriously, "What way?" "Let's keep you in suspense first." "Humph," deliberately mystifying. Yi Dingdang glared at him. Tang Zheng walked straight to the backyard. The others followed him. They wanted to see what he was going to do. Standing in the backyard, Tang Zheng looked around. Then he circulated his qi. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Several streams of qi shot out in all directions. In the blink of an eye, several complex patterns appeared on the ground. They flickered a few times and then disappeared. The others stared with wide eyes, but couldn't see anything. "Tang Zheng, you're setting up an array?" Empyrean Fairy suddenly walked over. Her eyes lit up as she stared at the ground. "You saw through it?" Tang Zheng clapped his hands. Success. What kind of array is this? It seems to have some skill. Empyrean Fairy curiously asked. You can't recognize this array? Tang Zheng was surprised. There are thousands of arrays. How can I recognize all of them? Then allow me to keep you in suspense. You'll know soon enough. Empyrean Fairy frowned. Seeing that Tang Zheng had made up his mind, she didn't ask any more questions. However, her curiosity was completely aroused by Tang Zheng. She walked around the backyard a few times, but still couldn't see anything. I'm going to the island to pick someone up. You guys stay at home. I'll be back soon, and I'll be back in an unprecedented way. Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously. Yi Dingdang grabbed him and threatened. You still dare to keep us in suspense? Are you going to tell us or not? What's going on? Tang Zheng raised his neck like a martyr. He said vehemently, I won't give in to force. I won't tell you. Seeing his comical appearance, Yi Dingdang pinched him hard and said, You're getting more and more cunning. You're going back to the island? Say hello to the people on the island for me. Wu Junshan, Lan Yu, and the others walked over. Many of Wu Junshan's subordinates were still on the island, so they couldn't help but miss them. Don't worry. It'll be easy for you to see them in the future. How is that possible? Lan Yu was in disbelief. The capital was thousands of kilometers away from the island. One had to switch between many different modes of transportation. It was truly troublesome to make a trip back and forth. How could it be easy? Seeing that they didn't believe him, Tang Zheng didn't point it out. He waved his hand and strode out of the villa. In the blink of an eye, he had left the capital. He then flew toward the island on his sword. Not long after, he arrived above the vast sea. The azure sky and the seawater formed a beautiful contrast. It was exceptionally magnificent. Looking down from above, he saw a lush island in the distance. This island was like a pearl in the middle of the vast sea. Whoosh! Tang Zheng turned into a streak of light and dove down. Boom! A ray of light shot up from the island and blocked Tang Zheng's path, causing him to be sent flying backwards. This is Gue Qiansui's defense. Tang Zheng secretly praised. Who dares to trespass into my territory? Gue Qiansui's voice rang out. In the vast sea, it was clearly transmitted to Tang Zheng's ears. Gue Qiansui, it's me. Tang Zheng didn't want to have more conflicts and directly revealed his identity. Upper Immortal, it's you? Gue Qiansui cried out in surprise. The light dissipated. Tang Zheng landed on the island steadily. The Witch Tribe Elder and the others came up to greet him. The big movement just now had completely alarmed the people on the island. Lord Messenger, why are you here? The Witch Tribe Elder led the Witch Tribe people to bow their heads. Tang Zheng quickly held him and said, Elder is too polite. Everyone, get up. I haven't seen you for a long time. I'm here to visit you. The Elder was extremely moved. Thank you for your concern. Tang Zheng. A pleasantly surprised voice came from behind, causing Tang Zheng to turn around abruptly, only to find Fang Shishir and Lu Qingmei looking at him affectionately. Brother. Another petite figure came out from between the two. Like a lively little elf, she directly threw herself into Tang Zheng's arms and hooked her arms around his neck. She stared at him with wide eyes. Tang Zheng laughed and hugged Nana. Nana, you've grown taller and heavier. This little girl was becoming more and more delicate, just like a little princess from a fairy tale. Her big black eyes turned as she pouted and said, Big brother, are you saying that Nanan got fat? How could it be? Then you said I've become heavier. Because you've grown taller, that's why you've become heavier. Nana suddenly understood and smiled. That's good. Nana doesn't want to become fat. Nana needs to be thin. Only then will she be beautiful. What does a little girl like you know about beauty? Tang Zheng couldn't help but laugh and pinched her pink cheeks. Fang Shishir and Lu Qingmei looked at Tang Zheng in a daze. Seeing that his embrace was completely occupied by Nana, they couldn't snatch his embrace from a little girl. They could only helplessly look at the two of them with a smile. All right, come down. Tang Zheng put down Nana. The little girl was reluctant to part with him and pouted. Tang Zheng stretched out his arms and tightly hugged Fang Shishir. Fang Shishir closed her eyes sweetly and snuggled against his broad chest, a sweet smile appearing on her lips. I'm going to pick you guys up, Tang Zheng said softly. Fang Shishir leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, I missed you. After saying this, she wrapped her arms around his waist. I missed you too. Tang Jing hugged her tightly as if he wanted to rub her into his body. Seeing that everyone was looking at her, Fang Shishir was both happy and shy. She whispered, everyone's looking. Tang Jing didn't care and said, let them look. Lu Qingmei's eyes were fiery as she looked at this scene with envy. If only she was in that embrace. But because of her identity, she couldn't openly lie in that warm embrace. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Tang Jing raised his head and happened to see Lu Qingmei. His heart moved, and he let go of Fang Shishir. He strode in front of Lu Qingmei and hugged her in his arms. Lu Qingmei's body stiffened, and her heart suddenly tightened, as if it was about to stop beating. Her cheeks were red like fire. She didn't expect that Tang Jing would dare to do such a thing in front of everyone. She was at a loss for a moment. Sister Mei, I missed you too, Tang Jing whispered in her ear. Chapter 998. Tang Jing calmly separated and hugged the elder. He even hugged the Witch Clan warrior beside him, as if he was hugging a group of old friends, and perfunctorily passed by. Fang Shishir was immersed in her own emotions, and did not notice the unusual and subtle relationship between the two of them. Little Zheng, you're here. An old voice sounded, and a figure with vigorous steps walked over from afar. Tang Jing's expression changed slightly. He became excited and quickly welcomed the person, cheering, Grandfather. Tang Dahai's mental state was much better than before. He was in high spirits, and even the wrinkles on his face were fewer. He laughed heartily at Tang Jing. Tang Jing hugged him and said excitedly, Grandfather, I've come to see you. Little Zheng misses you so much. The reveal of his true feelings was moving. Tang Dahai patted Tang Jing's back in relief and said, You've matured a lot, and your body has become stronger. Tang Jing giggled a few times and asked, Grandfather, how is your body? Are you used to living on the island? Tang Dahai forced a smile and said, What's there to be unaccustomed to? The air is good. There's no need to inhale smog. The scenery is charming, and everyone takes good care of me, just like at home. Even though he said that, Tang Jing could clearly see a trace of melancholy between his brows. His heart moved, and he understood that his grandfather's words were not sincere. With his personality, he would definitely not be used to living in this kind of place. Moreover, he did not even have a familiar friend, so he could not help but feel lonely. Grandfather, this time I'm here to bring you back to live, Tang Jing said impatiently as his heart ached. Bring me back. Tang Dahai was shocked, then overjoyed, but his expression quickly darkened, and he said worriedly, I heard that the environment in the country is very dangerous. When I go back, will I cause you trouble? I think it's better if I stay here. Having someone take care of me every day is already a blessing. I never dared to imagine such a life in the past. Grandfather, don't worry. With me here, no one can hurt you. Tang Jing patted his chest and promised. Really? Tang Dahai was skeptical. Tang Jing laughed. Grandpa, I'm here to pick you up. Don't worry. Tang Dahai breathed a sigh of relief and smiled as if relieved of a heavy burden. If that's the case, it's good to go back. Many buildings had already been built on the island, making it look like a holiday resort. Under the guidance of the elder, Tang Jing gradually experienced the atmosphere of the island. The elder acted as a narrator, and the grass and objects gradually became lively under his introduction. Elder, it's been hard on all of you. You built such a big home from scratch. The elder laughed. Lord Envoy, we are not at all tired. It is a wonderful thing for the Witch Clan to build their own home. If not for Lord Envoy, we would not have had this opportunity. After a pause, the elder continued, Lord Envoy, according to your instructions, we have already established a holy land. Oh, really? Tang Jing was shocked. This was just something he casually mentioned when he gave the spar to the elder. He did not think that he would actually start to establish it. He was truly a man of action. We did it according to our own ideas. As for the specific improvements, we will make them after Lord Envoy points them out. The elder said modestly. Let's go take a look at the sacred ground first. Tang Jing was in high spirits, and the group of people walked towards the depths of the island. The other which clan members automatically retreated and did not continue to follow. There are no rules. The sacred ground is of utmost importance. Outsiders are not allowed to enter, and the witch clan is not allowed to enter anytime and anywhere. This can guarantee the sacred place of the sacred ground in everyone's hearts. The elder clearly saw through Tang Zheng's doubts and explained. Tang Zheng nodded in understanding. As for Lord Envoy's relatives and friends, they are not within this range. They can enter the sacred ground at any time. During this period of time, they have absorbed the energy of the spar and cultivated diligently. Just now, Tang Zheng had discovered the changes in their cultivations, and the one who rose the fastest was actually Nana. As expected of a famous teacher, with the guidance of the Empyrean fairy, Nana's cultivation was like a rocket, and with a whoosh, she actually jumped to the first stage of the fasting stage. This speed was not inferior to that of Tang Zheng back then. His current cultivation was almost catching up to that of Yi Dingdang, Fang Shishir, and Lu Qingmei. The two of them had cultivated for a long time longer than Nana, but their speed was far inferior to that of Nana. No wonder the Empyrean fairy insisted on accepting Nana as his disciple. Her talent was incomparable, and in time, Tang Zheng was completely unable to predict how much her cultivation would increase to. Of course, although Nana's cultivation was high, she was still a child after all. Her mind was not mature, and her fighting strength was greatly reduced. She could not even compare to an ordinary cultivator in the foundation establishment stage. Tang Zheng did not want to rush the seedlings to help them grow, so he did not have high expectations for Nana. Her development had already exceeded his expectations, which made him very gratified. As for Fang Shishir, her cultivation had also advanced by leaps and bounds, and she had already reached the 5th level of fasting. It could be seen that she had worked very hard during this period of time. Lu Qingmei was slightly inferior, but she also had the cultivation of the 2nd level of fasting. The weakest was Tang Dahai. He was already old, and cultivation was more for him to strengthen his body. That was why he was only at the 4th level of the foundation establishment stage. Actually, we have to thank the elder for his guidance. If not for the elder's careful guidance, our cultivation would not have advanced by leaps and bounds. Hearing the elder's praise, Fang Shishir said with a smile that was like a flower, "No, I'm just giving you some superficial insights. It's mainly because you have high aptitudes and are hard-working in your cultivation." The elder waved his hand, not daring to claim credit. Stop flattering each other. In short, everyone is very powerful. Tang Zheng concluded. Lord Envoy, actually, everyone should thank you the most, because you provided the spar and everyone absorbed the energy of the spar. Their cultivation was able to increase by leaps and bounds. The elder said sincerely, "How are the spar now?" Tang Zheng's heart moved, and he asked curiously. The elder pointed forward and said, "We have arrived at the sacred land. Lord Envoy will know when you see it." Looking up, the scene in front of him changed drastically. The tropical plants became more and more lush, and the lotus leaves were infinitely green. The densely packed branches formed a dome above his head, completely covering the space in front of him, as if there was another world inside. A huge stone tablet stood in front of the dome with the words "Sacred Land" written on it. There were many complicated patterns on the stone tablet that flickered with a mysterious light. The elder channeled his energy into the stone tablet, causing it to flicker with light. The dome let out a rustling sound, and the branches came to life, quickly retreating backwards. In the end, a door and a path were revealed. "Lord Envoy, please enter." Tang Zheng raised his foot and walked in. There was actually a different world inside the dome. It was a huge space. The spar was placed in the middle, and there were many people sitting around it. Their palms were placed on the spar, and they were continuously absorbing the energy to cultivate. The spar became transparent, and the strange creature inside could be clearly seen. Everyone was already used to it, so they did not take it seriously. When Tang Zheng saw this spar again, he subconsciously thought of the spar that the Azure Dragon Palace worshipped and sealed himself. Xianyin and this unknown creature must have come from the sky beyond heaven. But Xianyin could break the seal on his own, and this unknown creature could not. The spar was slightly smaller than before, so for the time being, this unknown creature did not have the chance to be born. Has there been any abnormality in the spar during this period of time? Tang Zheng asked. The elder pondered for a moment, then shook his head and said, according to our observation, there is nothing unusual. Tang Zheng muttered to himself and nodded. Looking at the witch clan members who were immersed in cultivation, he said in a low voice, everyone, be quiet. Don't disturb their cultivation. I'll take a look around. After walking around the spar, Tang Zheng found that everyone was focused on cultivating. Energy continuously flowed from the spar into their palms, and their cultivation speed was indeed much faster than that of ordinary people. The elder introduced in a low voice, the energy of the spar is too strong. After everyone absorbs a certain amount of energy, they have to spend a period of time refining it. Otherwise, it will be harmful to their cultivation. Tang Zheng's cultivation was strong, so he refined the energy very quickly. He did not have this problem. So, everyone takes turns to come to the sacred ground to cultivate. Elder, your arrangements are very thoughtful. With you doing all this, I can rest assured. Lord Envoy, you flatter me. After wandering around for a while, the few of them left the sacred ground. The dome returned to its original state, blocking everyone's line of sight. Ever since we obtained the spar, our clansman's cultivation has risen to a new level. The entire witch clan is grateful to Lord Envoy. The elder bowed slightly and said gratefully, Elder, if you say such polite words again, I will get angry. Tang Zheng deliberately kept a straight face. This old man misspoke. Please don't blame me, Lord Envoy. Sigh, if the clansmen who returned to the country had the chance to absorb energy, then our witch clan would be even more powerful. The elder could not help but sigh with regret. Tang Zheng laughed. Elder's words are very right. We must treat everyone equally. The young elites of the clan must go to the secular world to gain experience, and the clansmen outside must also find time to come back and concentrate on cultivating. Cultivation is the foundation of cultivators. But this round trip is a long journey. Moreover, they don't have the ability to fly on their swords yet. Lord Envoy, it's too troublesome. Tang Zheng said mysteriously. This time, I specially came here to solve this problem, so as to avoid your worries. I will establish a passage between the island and the capital, and then you will be able to come and go without obstruction. Is there such a way? The elder was overjoyed. Of course, the transmission array can do this. Let's find a suitable location first. I'll set up the array. Tang Zheng did not delay and immediately found a suitable location nearby. Following the same method, the genuine Qi flew out and set up a transmission array on the ground in the blink of an eye. The elder watched all of this without blinking. He shook his head and did not recognize the array. He could not help but mutter to himself, Lord Envoy is truly powerful. He actually knows such a mysterious array. My worries are completely unnecessary. Pah! Tang Zheng clapped his hands and called out, Done. Let's wrap up. It's done just like that. No one could tell what was going on and could not help but be puzzled. Chapter 999. A grand bonfire party welcomed Tang Zheng's arrival. The witch tribesmen sang and danced, and under the light of the fire, the witch tribesmen's faces were brimming with brilliant smiles. Tang Zheng sat at the top, smiling as he looked at the laughing clansmen. Many clansmen came to toast Tang Zheng, and he did not reject them. Little Zheng, how was the final exam last semester? Tang Dahai looked at him kindly and asked. Tang Zheng was stunned for a moment, not knowing how to answer because he did not take the final exam at all. What's wrong? Nothing. Tang Zheng was weak. He did not dare to look at the old man. Tang Dahai understood Tang Zheng very well. Seeing his reaction, he immediately understood that there was definitely a problem. He asked worriedly, Little Zheng, did something happen? Tang Zheng opened his mouth, but in the end, he did not say the word no. Since his grandfather had smelled it, he really could not say anything to lie. He took a deep breath and said, Grandfather, I'm not in school anymore. Not in school? Tang Dahai was so shocked that the cup in his hand fell on the table, and his expression changed greatly. How did you not go to school? Grandfather, don't be impatient. It's just a small accident. Seeing the old man's big reaction, Tang Zheng was shocked and hurriedly comforted him. Tang Dahai's face turned pale. He had always been proud of Tang Zheng for being admitted to a good university. Although his development later exceeded his expectations, Tang Dahai still hoped that Tang Zheng could study hard. He himself was not very cultured, so perhaps he had placed more of his hopes on Tang Zheng. Now that he heard this bad news, his entire body was in a bad state, as if someone had poured a basin of ice water on him. Suddenly, Tang Dahai let out a long sigh. He was full of persuasion, but he did not say out loud. He said dejectedly, "Little Zheng, I know you have grown up and have your own ideas on many things. Many of my opinions are not suitable, but if you have already made up your mind, then I will support you." Tang Zheng's nose turned sour, and he had already made a decision in his heart. He resolutely said, "Grandfather, I haven't finished speaking yet. The school matter has been resolved, and school is about to start. I will continue to go back to school." "Really?" Tang Dahai's worry turned into joy, and his face glowed again. Tang Zheng nodded firmly. "Of course. People have to learn when they're alive. I can't fall behind. This is what my grandfather taught me since I was young. I've always remembered it." Tang Dahai was comforted and laughed heartily. "You're really my good grandson." Fang Shishir took a deep look at Tang Zheng. This decision was within her expectations, because she understood the relationship between this pair of grandfather and grandson. Tang Zheng would do anything for his grandfather. Whether Gu Guan truly wanted to return to school or to fulfill his grandfather's wishes, he would make this choice. Filial piety was the most important virtue of all. Fang Shishir was also a traditional girl at heart. She admired Tang Zheng for this very much. She couldn't help but smile. That night, Tang Zheng drank a lot. In the end, he didn't use his martial arts to dissolve the alcohol, so he was drunk. In a daze, a soft body slipped into his arms. At first, she was Fang Shishir, then Yi Dingdang, then Lu Qing Mei Wu Muhongyan. Each and every woman's charming face changed in front of his eyes, causing him to be intoxicated. The salty sea breeze blew in. Tang Zheng felt a trace of coolness. He opened his eyes in a daze and found that there was another person in his arms. Fang Shishir's lazy appearance was very charming. Fang Shishir felt his gaze and shyly opened her eyes. She smiled sweetly and leaned into his arms. She whispered, "Last night you were drunk. I helped you back, and then you did something bad. Look, this is the evidence." Following Fang Shishir's finger, Tang Zheng saw that the room was in a mess, with clothes scattered everywhere. Fang Shishir lightly punched his chest a few times and said, "Last night you were like a wild beast. Look at the marks you left on my body." As he said this, he stretched out his arm. Sure enough, there were a few marks. Tang Zheng gently stroked her arm and said with a pained expression, "I was drunk last night. I'm sorry I hurt you." "Hee, but you're also very manly when you're drunk." Fang Shishir shyly lowered her head. "Is that so?" Tang Zheng shook his head and asked with an evil smile, "Last night, did you see that I was drunk and then had bad intentions towards me? What bad things did you do to me?" "It was clearly you who did bad things to me. You still have the nerve to blame me." Fang Shishir pretended to be angry. The two of them played for a while and rolled together again. After a long time, they got up and washed up. After breakfast, the group of people arrived in front of the transmission array. There were already a lot of people gathered here, and everyone was filled with anticipation towards the Lord Envoy. This is the transmission array. It will open up a passage between our island and the capital, and then we will be able to travel freely. This is extremely important to us. Everyone can concentrate on cultivating on the island and also go to the bustling city to train. Combining theory and practice, this way, our strength will not be a castle in the air, but a solid foundation. After Tang Zheng passionately explained for a while, everyone's emotions were stirred up and their eyes burned with passion. Tang Zheng took a deep breath. This was the first time he had set up a transmission array, and this transmission array was different from the one in the ghost realm. This was because the transmission array in the ghost realm was very large and could teleport many people and resources, but the one he had set up was a miniature version and could teleport people and resources at once. This way, there wouldn't be a huge commotion. After all, the other side was the capital. If there was too much commotion and it attracted the attention of others, then the gains would not make up for the losses. Tang Zheng circulated his power and pointed his finger into the air. So, his true chi was injected into the array. Immediately, a faint light rose from the ground, but it was not dazzling. Under the illumination of the sun, it seemed almost negligible. Yesterday, Tang Zheng had asked the elders to select a group of Witch clan people, and he wanted to bring them back to the capital. This group of people were all extremely excited, and their eyes lit up as they watched this scene fervently. Everyone walked to the center of the array and stand there. Immediately, these people carefully walked to the center of the array. Tang Dahai and Fang Shishir were no exception. They all stood in the center of the array. Tang Zheng turned and said to the elder, "Elder, I've already told you the trick to activating the array. If you have any problems, you can come to the capital to find me through the array." "Yes, Lord Envoy, this old man understands. I wish Lord Envoy a safe journey." Everyone waved goodbye. Tang Zheng walked into the array and his power vibrated, completely activating the teleportation array. With a burst of violent fluctuations, a light flashed and everyone disappeared. In the capital, in the backyard of the villa, the mana fluctuated violently. Empyrean Fairy jumped out of the house with a whoosh and looked at this scene in surprise. Whoosh! In the next second, a group of people appeared out of thin air in the backyard. Yi Ding Dang and the others rushed over and saw this scene. They were all dumbfounded. Everyone suddenly realized that Tang Zheng was mysterious before. It turned out that the array he set up had such a wonderful effect that it could make people appear out of thin air. "What kind of array is this?" Empyrean Fairy asked impatiently. "Teleportation array," Tang Zheng said with a smile. He had already confirmed from Qi Yu and the inner demons that there was no teleportation array in the human world. This meant that it was unique to the ghost realm. No wonder even the Empyrean Fairy could not recognize this array. He did not know who invented this array. It was really powerful. People and things thousands of miles away could be teleported in an instant. It was more convenient and faster than any current transportation. If such a teleportation array was set up during a war, the army would directly descend from the sky and pierce the enemy's heart. There would be no need to fight the war. Empyrean Fairy recalled the 3 words teleportation array and was sure that she had never heard of it. She could not help but be secretly shocked. Could it be that he learned this from the ghost realm? Because he was sure that there was no such array in the human world. "Master!" Nana's voice interrupted the Empyrean Fairy's thoughts. Nana was like a little swallow that threw herself into the Empyrean Fairy's arms. A smile finally appeared on the Empyrean Fairy's cold face. "Master, Nana missed you so much. Nana has always remembered your teachings and has been working hard to cultivate. You are indeed a good disciple of Master." Empyrean Fairy stroked her delicate face and smiled from the bottom of her heart. Fang Shishir and the others were still thinking about the feeling just now. The feeling of being in a different place in an instant made them feel as if they were still in a dream. It was not real at all, especially the Wu clan people who were looking around curiously. Tang Zheng called the Wu clan people who were far away to come over. These Wu clan people who came early had long been accustomed to the life in the capital. He asked them to bring their people to settle down. Fortunately, they had already bought a lot of houses nearby, so they had a lot of space to live in. Only Tang Zheng's family was left in the backyard. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu hurriedly came over and supported Tang Dahai. They said with concern, "Old Master, quickly go inside and rest. The sun is shining brightly outside. It's very hot." Tang Dahai looked around and asked blankly, "Is this little Zheng's residence in the capital?" To him, this luxurious villa was still a bit dazzling. Deep down, he was still that simple old man. "Yes, this is your home. Old Master, your home." Wu Junshan said as he held Tang Dahai's hand. Tang Zheng smiled as he looked at the two of them happily. He did not comment on Wu Junshan and Lan Yu's actions, as he had seen everything that this couple had done. Yi Dingdang and Feng Sure reunited after a long time, holding hands and whispering to each other. It was unknown what they were talking about, but from time to time, they would glance at Princess and, obviously talking about the little secrets between women. The family was reunited, and everyone was happily gathered together. That night was the most lively night in the villa. Although Tang Dahai was happy, he was secretly worried. Looking at the girls who were more beautiful than flowers, although he was old, he was not stupid. He guessed that they must have some sort of relationship with Tang Zheng. His grandson was so lucky to be with so many fairy-like girls. He had to remind him not to be like the modern Chinshimi. Chapter 1000. On the vast and boundless sea, Tang Zheng and his group boarded a small fishing boat and sailed into the sea. They had already become familiar with each other. Wang Guanxuan had told his colleagues not to neglect Tang Zheng. Although they were puzzled, they did not dare to disobey. On the way, Lu Qingmei was undoubtedly the focus of attention. Many topics revolved around her. Lu Qingmei was, after all, someone who had been in the workplace for a long time, so she was able to handle it well. She enjoyed this kind of time with Tang Zheng and was completely immersed in happiness. The fishing boat floated and sank, riding the wind and waves. Wang Guanxuan asked with concern, "The wind and waves outside are big. If you get seasick, you can go directly to the cabin to rest." Tang Zheng smiled and said it was fine. Lu Qingmei was in high spirits. She stood at the bow and looked at the rolling waves. She stretched out her arms as if she was hugging the sea. She was enjoying it very much and did not look seasick at all. Wang Guanxuan still remembered the first time he took a boat out to sea. He vomited so much that his soul almost left him. But these two people's reactions were too strange. He couldn't help but ask curiously, "Do you go out to sea often?" "No." "Then why don't you have any reaction?" Wang Guanxuan's expression was strange. The others also looked at them like they were looking at aliens. The main reason was that this fishing boat was too small. It was far from being as stable as a luxury cruise ship. Tang Zheng laughed out loud. How could such a small wave cause a cultivator to have a reaction? He casually said, "Maybe it has something to do with people's physical fitness. Our bodies are very good." Everyone thought that their bodies were not bad either, but they were not as free and easy as you. The small fishing boat rode the wind and waves and gradually sailed into the deep sea. Looking at the sea, people couldn't help but feel a sense of insignificance. In the distance, they saw a huge yacht. The white yacht was bathed in the sun and had a beautiful luster. It made people deeply attracted by its charming figure. Wang Guanxuan introduced, "I talked to the boss on the phone. The boss is already on the yacht. He specially came to see you." Tang Zheng said calmly, "Isn't your boss overseas? He canceled everything at the last minute and rushed here just to see you," Wang Guanxuan said in a deep voice, as if he was trying to show how much his boss valued Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng chuckled. "Thank you for your boss's concern. I'll thank him in person later for agreeing to come with me." The small fishing boat approached the yacht, and they went up the stairs to the deck of the yacht. Immediately, the aura of a rich man hit him in the face. The difference between a high-end yacht and a small cargo ship was simply too big. Several people were standing on the deck to welcome them. When they saw Tang Zheng and Lu Qingmei get on the yacht, they came to greet them. The person at the front laughed heartily and extended his hands from a distance. With a few strides, he arrived in front of Tang Zheng and firmly grasped his hand. He excitedly said, "Welcome to my ship, young Master Tang. You bring light to my humble dwelling today." Hearing his praise, Tang Zheng smiled modestly and said, "Mr. Du, you flatter me. I'm also very happy to meet you." Du Qifeng waved his big hand and said sonorously, "I'm not flattering you. I'm just telling the truth. I've admired young Master Tang for a long time. It's really a blessing of 3 lifetimes to meet you in person this time." Du Qifeng was also a successful person, but in front of Tang Zheng his attitude was extremely low because he knew that Tang Zheng had a huge amount of power. As the saying goes, the ignorant are not afraid. It was precisely because Du Qifeng knew the inside story that he was more in awe of Tang Zheng. When the others saw their boss's behavior, they were shocked. They couldn't help but stare at Tang Zheng for a long time, trying to see if there was anything different about him. However, except for his calm and composed manner, there was not much difference in other aspects. "Sorry to bother you this time, Mr. Du." Tang Zheng smiled faintly and didn't comment on his compliment. Suddenly, his eyes turned and fell on a person behind Du Qifeng. His pupils suddenly shrank. "It's you." His sharp eyes fell on the other party like a knife. The other party felt as if there was a giant sword hanging over his head, which could chop down at any time. Danger lurked everywhere. He was shocked. It seemed that compared with the rumors, Tang Zheng was even better. Compared with the beginning, it was really a difference between heaven and earth. Du Qifeng turned his head and happened to see his bodyguard. Speaking of this bodyguard, he was a very capable person. He had once pulled Du Qifeng back from the gates of hell, so Du Qifeng valued him very much. "Young Master Tang, do you know each other?" Du Qifeng asked curiously. "Of course, I know the famous cold-faced killer, Xiao Xiaoling. How can I not know him?" The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth hooked up. He really didn't expect to meet him here. He almost forgot this person. At the beginning, on the train to Dianan, he met Xiao Xiaoling. Because of Li Xiaoyan's instigation, he was almost killed by Xiao Xiaoling. Later, Long Tingyu sent Xiao Xiaoling to assassinate Mu Hongyan and her daughter. He was defeated by Tang Zheng. After Mu Hongyan pleaded for mercy, he let Xiao Xiaoling go back to pass the message. Xiao Xiaoling once said that he would definitely challenge Tang Zheng again to correct his master's name. But since then, Xiao Xiaoling seemed to have evaporated from the world. There was no news, and he never appeared. Tang Zheng's realm was getting higher and higher. He almost forgot about this person. Now that he saw him again, he was naturally very surprised. "Oh, I didn't expect young Master Tang to be so knowledgeable. You even know the origin of my bodyguard." Du Qifeng was stunned. Of course, he investigated his bodyguard very clearly and knew what he had done. It was precisely because of his experience that Du Qifeng looked at him differently. Because he was an assassin, he could more effectively prevent the assassination of other assassins. It was the safest to let him be a bodyguard. Xiao Xiaoling's expression was very complicated. After he was let go by Tang Zheng, he was obsessed with swordsmanship. He hoped that he could come up with a way to crack Tang Zheng and correct his master's name. But later, there were more and more rumors about Tang Zheng, which almost made his confidence collapse. He gradually understood that he was far surpassed by Tang Zheng. It was impossible for him to beat him. Disheartened, he directly left the assassin industry. He happened to meet Du Qifeng, so he turned into a bodyguard. He never thought that it was the will of heaven that made him meet his nemesis. His eyes flickered, and he didn't dare to look at Tang Zheng's eyes. But in the end, he still raised his head. His eyes flashed and stared at Tang Zheng. For a moment, the atmosphere was a little strange. Du Qifeng was also a smart person. He immediately noticed the clues. He looked left and right and asked, "Young Master Tang, is there any secret in this?" Before Tang Zheng could answer, Xiao Xiaoling had already stepped in front of Du Qifeng. He faced Tang Zheng and said coldly, "Tang Zheng, I want to challenge you." Challenge? Everyone was shocked. Other employees didn't know the details of Tang Zheng, but they heard a lot of rumors about the boss's mysterious bodyguard. It was said that several assassins came to assassinate the boss, but they were all killed by this bodyguard one by one. He was extremely powerful. He took the initiative to challenge Tang Zheng. Wasn't this bullying the weak? It was simply murder. Wang Guanchuan also had the same idea. When he thought that Tang Zheng was his junior brother, if something happened to him, how could he explain it to his teacher? He quickly stood up to dissuade him. "Boss, how can this be? My junior brother is just an ordinary college student. How can he be Xiao Xiaoling's opponent? Isn't this sending him to his death?" Du Qifeng was puzzled and his eyebrows were twisted. He was not as naive as the employees. When he saw the reaction of Tang Zheng and Xiao Xiaoling, he knew that the two must have a conflict. He originally wanted to climb the line of Tang Zheng, but now it seemed that it was the opposite of what he wanted. He was annoyed. If he didn't bring Xiao Xiaoling this time, wouldn't he not encounter such an embarrassing thing? He was in a dilemma and couldn't decide for a while. Tang Zheng was calm. If it was before, he would face Xiao Xiaoling as if he was facing a great enemy, but now he couldn't make any waves. Challenge? Haha, do you really have this confidence? Have you really practiced your swordsmanship to this level? Tang Zheng asked with a smile. Xiao Xiaoling didn't have much confidence, but he didn't back down. He said, a real man has to do something. Sometimes, knowing that there is a tiger in the mountain, he goes to the tiger mountain. Some things have to be done. Haha, you have a little more courage and spirit than before. Tang Zheng joked with a smile. One person is responsible for one's actions. This is the grudge between us. Please don't involve Mr. Du, he is my benefactor. You can't hurt him because of me. Xiao Xiaoling was afraid of venting his anger on Du Qifeng, so he said in advance. Xiao Xiaoling, Du Qifeng's heart moved. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. He didn't expect him to be so righteous. Xiao Xiaoling cupped his hands to Du Qifeng and said, Mr. Du, I can only repay your kindness in my next life. Du Qifeng's mind was full of thoughts. He said, don't say that. You still have a good time. Why do you do stupid things? Du Qifeng had heard too many rumors about Tang Zheng. Those brilliant achievements were like medals of victory hanging on his chest, which made it impossible for people to turn a blind eye to them. There are some things that must be done, even if they die. Xiao Xiaoling said resolutely. The others were infected by his momentum. Their hearts couldn't help but be suspended. They looked at the two people nervously. This change surprised them. They all guessed that the next scene would be a bloody scene. Xiao Xiaoling, you can't bully people like this. Tang Zheng is my junior brother. He is an ordinary student. What hatred do you have with him? What resentment do you have to be so ruthless that you have to take his life? Wang Guanchuan blushed and asked angrily. Xiao Xiaoling didn't look at him at all. He just stared straight at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng patted Wang Guanchuan on the shoulder and comforted him. Brother Wang, don't worry about me. Wang Guanchuan was burning with anxiety. He was like an ant on a hot pan. He said, Junior brother, it's all my fault. I brought you here. How can I explain it in front of my master in the future? Looking at his anxious appearance, Tang Zheng couldn't help laughing. Although they hadn't known each other for a long time, his good impression of his senior brother had greatly increased. He gently pulled him without any explanation. He found that his body had been pulled behind Tang Zheng. Chapter 1001. The others were infected by this somber atmosphere. They were silent, and their breathing slowed down involuntarily. They clenched their hands and looked at the two nervously. The layman watched the excitement, and the expert watched the door. In the eyes of the layman, Tang Zheng stood steadily, indifferent, like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Xiao Xiaoling's murderous aura was awe-inspiring, like an unsheathed sword, showing its sharpness. Whoosh! A soft sword flew out from Xiao Xiaoling's waist, like a spirit snake, winding forward, and instantly arrived in front of Tang Zheng. The sword chi was like a viper spitting out a hissing sound, stabbing towards Tang Zheng's heart. Xiao Xiaoling was an assassin, and he went straight to the vital point. This was his habit, and reaction developed from years of training. The others' breathing stopped at this moment. They were all frightened by this sword, as if it was coming for them. The next second, their hearts would be pierced by this sword. The tip of the sword went straight to Tang Zheng's heart. He finally moved. He shot like lightning. His body did not move at all, like a towering mountain, immovable. But his hand was so fast that almost no one could see the trajectory. Xiao Xiaoling's pupils suddenly shrank, and his heart seemed to burst out of his throat. But he still did not turn back and tried his best to win. Suddenly, there was an explosion of exclamation. The others' eyelids suddenly jumped. They only saw that the sword in Xiao Xiaoling's hand was gone. Instead, Tang Zheng held a sword in his hand, shining with cold light, and aimed at Xiao Xiaoling. Xiao Xiaoling seemed to have been immobilized. He suddenly stopped in front of Tang Zheng and stared blankly at his empty hands. Defeated. A crushing defeat. One move, just one move, he was defeated. He originally thought that he could still hold on to a few moves, but he didn't expect to be defeated in a mess. He couldn't help but become at a loss. What he had done before was useless. Why could Tang Zheng be so powerful? It was a joke to want to give Master a proper name. At this moment, all his pride was defeated and scattered into the dust. He was dejected, and his proud head drooped down. The others' reactions were even more wonderful. Their jaws almost fell to the ground. What happened just now? Why did it end as soon as it began? The most important thing was that it ended so strangely. Shouldn't it be a scene of blood splattering everywhere? Everything was quiet, as if it was a dream, so unreal. Even Du Qifeng, who had long heard of Tang Zheng's great reputation, felt his heart tighten. He really didn't expect that everything would turn out like this. The bodyguards he relied on all the time were so weak. For a moment, he stood there in a daze, not knowing what to do. Only Lu Qingmei was not surprised at all. A beautiful arc appeared at the corner of her mouth. This was her man. As expected, he was as dazzling as the stars. The other enemies could not cause any waves in front of him. Shua! The sword light flashed, and the tip of the sword pressed against Xiao Zhao's chest. Xiao Zhao's whole body was stiff, but he did not retreat, because he knew that he had been completely locked by Tang Zheng. It was impossible for him to escape. Kill me. I have no face to see my master after being defeated by you. Xiao Xiao coldly straightened his neck and said without fear, Seeking death? Naturally, I will fulfill your wish. Tang Zheng said without batting an eyelid, but his words caused everyone's heartstrings to tremble. The other people's gazes towards Tang Zheng underwent an earth-shattering change. It turned out that he was not a little sheep without the strength to truss up a chicken. No wonder the boss valued him so much. Wang Guanchuan's brain almost lost its ability to think. Wasn't he his junior brother? How could he be so powerful? Suddenly, he remembered Professor Qi's intriguing words and smile. His heart moved. Could it be that this was the real strength of Tang Zheng? His weak strength was just an illusion? At this point, he subconsciously looked at Tang Zheng and felt that he could not see through this junior brother. But before you die, let's make it clear who your master is. If you don't even dare to report your master, it can only mean that your master is too weak and not worth mentioning. Tang Zheng deliberately provoked him. Xiao Zhao's swordsmanship was extraordinary. It was definitely taught by a famous teacher. Nonsense. My master is a dignified grandmaster. How dare you slander him? Xiao Xiao flew into a rage. You listen to me. My master is a great master of swordsmanship, the god of swords. God of swords? Tang Zheng was shocked and looked at Xiao Xiao inconceivably. Although he guessed that Xiao Zhao's master was a great master of swordsmanship, he could not guess that he was the god of swords. The god of swords died because of him. No wonder Xiao Xiao was so angry and wanted to fight with him. So, you're a disciple of the Sword Pavilion. Legend has it that the god of swords only has 3 disciples. Are you the 4th? Tang Zheng asked curiously. Xiao Zhao's face turned red, showing shame. He said, I did not abide by the rules of the Sword Pavilion and was expelled from the Sword Pavilion. I have no face to mention my master's name again. Abandoned disciple of the Sword Pavilion? Tang Zheng raised the corner of his mouth. Interesting. What rules of the Sword Pavilion did you violate? How could you be expelled from the sect? Why do you ask so clearly? Are you ridiculing me? Xiao Xiao asked. You have already been defeated by me. Do I still need to ridicule you? Xiao Zhao's expression darkened. It was obvious that Tang Zheng's words were reasonable. He hesitated for a moment and said, My master is a great master of his generation, the master of the Sword Pavilion, but he was restrained and insulted by the Lord. I advised my master to leave the Lord, and my master expelled me from the sect. When Xiao Xiao saw the Lord reprimanding the god of swords, he was angry and contradicted the Lord. Later, he persuaded the god of swords to leave the Lord, but he never thought that the god of swords was loyal to the Lord. His disciple naturally became a sacrifice and was expelled from the Sword Pavilion. The Sword Pavilion and the Lord are one. Your behavior will naturally violate the taboo. It is normal for you to be expelled from the sect. You're not a fool. Why do you still do it knowing this? Tang Zheng asked. In my heart, there is only the Sword Pavilion and my master. As for the Lord, Humph, I have never considered it. You want me to work for him? Wishful thinking, Xiao Xiao said resolutely. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. Xiao Xiao was not as confused as the other disciples of the Sword Pavilion. He was dead set on the Azure Dragon Hall and the Lord. This was really unexpected. My master died in your hands. I am incompetent now. I can't avenge my master. If you kill me, I will go to my master to ask for punishment. Although the God of Swords is dead, and the Sword Pavilion's lair has been destroyed by me, Song Yu escaped with a group of disciples of the Sword Pavilion. Who is Song Yu? You should know better than me. Do you have the heart to watch these fellow disciples under his leadership step by step to destruction? Tang Zheng asked. Xiao Zhao's eyes flashed with a touch of light, and then quickly dimmed. He said, My master is no longer here. Why should I care about the life and death of others? Although he said this, the emotions in his eyes fluctuated greatly. Tang Zheng's fiery eyes immediately caught this look. He said, You don't care about the life and death of others, but don't you care about the Sword Pavilion signboard? I'm afraid that the God of Swords doesn't want this signboard to be completely covered in dust, and he doesn't want this signboard to fall into the hands of a villain. Xiao Xiao knew a lot about Song Yu. When he was expelled from the Sword Pavilion, Song Yu had not yet entered the Sword Pavilion. However, Xiao Xiao had always been very concerned about the Sword Pavilion. Naturally, he had a way to know that someone had replaced his original position. As for Song Yu, he had investigated a lot and knew his temperament very well. After listening to Tang Zheng's words, his mood was not as turbulent as on the surface. Deep worry emerged in the depths of his eyes. The Sword Pavilion was the God of Swords' painstaking effort. Did he really have to listen to the manipulation of people like Song Yu? To be honest, Xiao Xiao did not want to see this situation. Humph, do you want me to work for you and be an enemy of Song Yu? Xiao Xiao was very smart and immediately guessed Tang Zheng's intentions. Tang Zheng smiled and did not hide it. He praised, You are really smart. You guessed it so quickly. From the incident of Li Xiaotian subduing the Li Palace, Tang Zheng was inspired. No matter if it was the Li Palace or the Sword Pavilion, they both possessed powerful energy. If they were to directly destroy these two organizations, it would be too much of a pity. This was the best way to deal with them. Li Xiaotian, relying on her identity as the Holy Maiden of the Li Palace, could subdue most of the disciples of the Li Palace and control the Li Palace. If it was an outsider, even if he had a strong backing, it would be impossible to do this. In the same way, although Xiao Xiao was an abandoned disciple of the Sword Pavilion, after all, he was the personal disciple of the Sword God. His identity was not ordinary, so he was also likely to control the powerful force of the Sword Pavilion. Seeing that Tang Zheng did not deny it, Xiao Xiao snorted and said disdainfully, You are dreaming. You killed my master, but you still want me to obey you. Do you think it's possible? Unless it is the next life. So determined? Tang Zheng chuckled. Xiao Xiao snorted and simply turned his head away. He was too lazy to look at Tang Zheng, but his attitude had shown that he would not obey Tang Zheng at all. The atmosphere became more and more tense, and the others felt that their breathing was stifling, especially Du Qifeng. His heart was filled with apprehension. This time, he had completely offended Tang Zheng, so how could he have a chance to climb this line? If Tang Zheng did not vent his anger on him, then he would thank the heavens. Du Qifeng took a deep breath and bit his tongue. The sharp pain made his nerves relax for a moment. He suppressed his anxious mood and said cautiously, Young Master Tang, there's definitely still room for negotiation. Before he finished speaking, Xiao Xiao had already shouted, Boss, don't say it. This is a personal grudge between me and him. I believe he will not vent his anger on you. Although he and I are enemies, I know his style of doing things very well. He will not vent his anger on the innocent. You know me quite well. Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily. I've always studied my enemies carefully. Of course, I know your style of doing things very well. With your understanding of me, do you think I will kill you? Tang Zheng asked with interest. Although you're not an evil person who kills innocent people, you have never been merciful to your enemies. How can I have a chance to live? Xiao Xiao laughed at himself. Sure enough, it is very accurate. Tang Zheng sighed and stabbed with his sword. Puff! Chapter 1002. The picture froze. Xiao Xiaoling was lying in a pool of blood with his eyes closed. The long sword was inserted in his heart. Everyone concluded that he was dead. This was really a picture of blood splashing everywhere. But the one who was killed was Xiao Xiaoling, not the powerless Tang Zhong. Most of them were ordinary people who had never seen killing in their lives. At this moment, they were almost scared silly, standing in place like wood at a loss. After all, Du Qifeng was a man who had seen much of the world. Although he was startled, he wasn't dumbfounded. After a moment of absent-mindedness, he came back to his senses and sighed deeply. Alas, why bother? He didn't blame Tang Zhong, and he didn't dare to blame him. It was no exaggeration to say that the lives of the people on this boat were all in Tang Zheng's hands. But Du Qifeng was not worried, because he knew that Tang Zhong was not a person who killed innocent people. "Give me a room," Tang Zhong calmly said to Du Qifeng. Du Qifeng hurriedly nodded. "Okay, please come with me." Tang Zhong lifted Xiao Xiaoling. Blood dripped on the deck, leaving a long blood stain that extended into the cabin. The others stared at all this with their mouths agape, unable to speak for a long time. Watching several people disappear into the yacht, the others were finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. They looked at each other with pale faces. "Brother Wang, what exactly is your junior brother doing?" Someone couldn't help but ask. Wang Guanchuan shook his head. He had already guessed that Tang Zhong was extraordinary, but he didn't expect him to kill people. This was too much of an impact on his three views. The yacht was filled with a chilling and frightening atmosphere. Inside the cabin, Du Qifeng was stopped outside the door. Lu Qingmei stood at the door as a bodyguard. No one could get close. Du Qifeng wanted to find some topics to break the silence, but looking at Lu Qingmei's beautiful face, he felt that all words were pale and powerless. He remembered very clearly that Lu Qingmei didn't even blink in the face of that scene. Sure enough, none of the people around young Master Tang are easy to deal with. Even this seemingly weak beauty is not an ordinary person. Du Qifeng was filled with emotions. Although he was usually in high spirits, he also felt a sense of pressure in front of Lu Qingmei. Thus, he said embarrassedly, "Just let me know if you need anything. I'll be right outside." Lu Qingmei nods solemnly. Du Qifeng turns around and leaves. When Du Qifeng came to the deck, the others gathered around him and started asking questions. "Boss, what's going on? Who is that person? How dare he kill people?" "Yeah, this is murder. What should we do?" "I saw that he didn't even blink. Will he kill us?" Seeing that everyone was still in a state of shock, Du Qifeng reached out his hand and pressed down. The others immediately quieted down and looked at him with burning eyes. "Don't worry, everyone. There will be no problem with your personal safety. That's just a personal grudge between young Master Tang and Xiao Xiaoling. Young Master Tang is clear about his grudges and will never involve the innocent." Du Qifeng comforted. "But that's murder? Isn't he afraid of leaking the news and then silencing us?" Du Qifeng laughed. His eyes narrowed into two slits. He said, "If anyone wants to report young Master Tang, go ahead, but I guarantee that he will regret it." I don't dare." Everyone quickly waved their hands in panic. Du Qifeng saw that Wang Guanchuan didn't say a word. He patted him on the shoulder and said, "Don't let your imagination run wild. Your junior brother is not simple. How can this wind and waves overturn his huge ship?" Wang Guanchuan suddenly raised his head, stared at Du Qifeng, and asked, "Boss, what kind of person is my junior brother?" Seeing that he actually asked such a question, Du Qifeng laughed and said, "Guanchuan, you don't even know the details of young Master Tang. Alas, what can I do for you? You have a treasure mountain, but you don't know it. Do you know how many people want to climb the line of young Master Tang, but can't do it? This is your opportunity. Don't miss it." "What kind of person is my junior brother?" Wang Guanchuan persistently asked. Du Qifeng thought for a while and said in a deep voice, "His glorious deeds can't be explained in a few words, but you just need to remember that he's someone we can't afford to offend. Someone once made an enemy of him, but in the end, they disappeared and turned into the dust of history. The Chu family and the Song family in the capital are one of them." "The Chu family and the Song family in the capital?" These words exploded in everyone's ears like thunder, making them feel dizzy and disoriented. There were huge waves in their hearts. Although these two families were too far away for ordinary people, there were many rumors on the streets. They had heard a few words and knew how powerful these two families were. Some time ago, the news of the two families' sudden destruction had become the topic of conversation during their leisure time, but they didn't expect that the person who caused this change was standing in front of them. This matter was far more shocking to them than just killing someone, because to do this was 1,000,000 times more difficult than killing a person. Everyone looked at each other and couldn't speak for a long time because they really couldn't find words to describe their mood. Du Chifeng was not surprised by their reaction. He warned them, "Now you understand my good intentions, right? So keep your mouths shut. This is the only way to protect yourself. Otherwise, don't blame me for not warning you if you get into trouble in the future." Everyone was like a chicken pecking at food. They kept nodding and said in horror, "Understood, boss, don't worry, we will never say half a word." "What is young Master Tang doing now?" Someone glanced at the cabin and asked curiously. Du Chifeng was also very curious. He turned his head and looked at it. He quickly warned, "Don't inquire about what you shouldn't know." In fact, he was also very curious about what Tang Zheng was doing. What was Tang Zheng doing? After he put Xiaoling down, he put a few wounds on him to stop the bleeding. Xiaoling's life was hanging by a thread, and his vitality was almost completely cut off. That sword pierced his heart. If it weren't for his profound skill, he would have died. But in the face of modern medicine, the injury of this sword was still fatal. There was no effective way to save his life. However, Tang Zheng was a person who repeatedly created miracles. When he stabbed that sword, he already had a plan in mind. Therefore, he calmly took out a 9-turn soul return pill, pried open Xiaoling's mouth, and stuffed it in. The 9-turn soul return pill melted in his mouth and turned into a warm current that spread from his throat to his whole body, quickly exerting its medicinal effect. The wound in his heart was healing rapidly. The 9-turn soul return pill made this dying body glow with a strong vitality, just like a withered tree in spring. "Ah!" A cry of surprise came out of Xiaoling's mouth. He was like a suffocating person who suddenly breathed a mouthful of air. He suddenly opened his eyes, sat up, greedily took a big breath of air, and made a sound in his throat. His eyes were straight, and his scattered sight gradually focused, and he saw everything in front of him again. Just now, he had always thought that he was going to die, and even felt that he had seen the legendary underworld. In this life, as an assassin, he didn't know how many people had died in his hands. This time, he died in the hands of Tang Zheng. He didn't have much resentment. This was his destiny. He had already understood this. In fact, it was good to die. He could go to see his master and his fellow disciples. With them, he could find a real home. But somehow, as if there was an invisible big hand suddenly appeared, tightly grasping him. This force was so great that it directly pulled him back from the gates of hell. Xiaoling saw everything in front of him clearly and found that Tang Zheng was looking at him with a smile. He was shocked and subconsciously stepped back, exclaiming, "What's going on? Am I not dead? Then do you think you are dead or alive now?" Tang Zheng shrugged and asked, As an assassin, Xiaoling certainly knew the means of killing people very well. The sword pierced his heart, and there was no possibility of survival. He suddenly bowed his head, and the clothes on his chest were dripping with blood. He quickly tore off his clothes and exposed his chest. Although his chest was covered with blood, there was no trace of a wound. He couldn't believe it. He kept groping around, but still couldn't find a wound. As if he had seen a ghost, he shouted, "What's going on? Don't you want to die? I'll help you." Tang Zheng said lightly, "Then why am I not dead now? You've already died once. This new life was given to you by me. You'll listen to me in your next life. This is your next life. As an assassin, you should keep your promises. Now, it's time to fulfill your promise." This was Tang Zheng's plan. Xiaoling was a talent, and he was once a disciple of the Sword Pavilion. It was most effective to use him to deal with Song Yu, who was erratic. Although he thought that Song Yu couldn't make any big waves, he didn't intend to take it lightly. There were too many salted fish turning over. Song Yu, this salted fish, may also turn over. Of course, he wouldn't give Song Yu this opportunity. Moreover, if Shaoling unified the sword pavilion, the strength of the Lord would be weakened again, making him a commander without an army, which would be much easier to deal with. Shaoling was stunned. His life was indeed saved by Tang Zheng. Did he really have to surrender to him? Suddenly, he was in a dilemma and didn't know what to do. If you want to break your promise, then I'm wrong about you. Humph, what cold-faced assassin. It turns out that you're a person who doesn't keep his word. The sword pavilion has cultivated such a person. The sword god's reputation is nothing more than this. Tang Zheng said coldly. You are not allowed to insult my master. Shaoling's temples bulged high, and his eyes stared at Tang Zheng with fire. Tang Zheng was not afraid at all. Shaoling's momentum gradually weakened. His heart turned 1,000 times, and finally, he powerlessly hung his head. Tell me your decision. Tang Zheng roared, as if his voice was deafening. Chapter 1003. When a voice fell, Shaoling's momentum changed greatly, because at this moment, he had let go of the obsession in his heart, and his heart had undergone a tremendous change. Tang Zheng was satisfied and looked at Xiao with a smile. He had already expected that he would agree. He was such a person. Suddenly, Tang Zheng's face changed slightly. He stared straight at Xiao and found that his momentum was still changing rapidly, becoming more and more fierce, like an unsheathed sword, with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes, adding more momentum. Your cultivation is about to break through. Tang Zheng certainly understood what this situation meant. He didn't expect that the transformation of Shaoling's soul would cause an earth-shaking change in his power. Actually, this was not something inconceivable. After all, the change in one's state of mind was closely related to one's cultivation. His transformation, this time, was equivalent to a new life, throwing away many of the shackles of the past. Xiao was also surprised. He didn't expect that there would be such a miraculous effect after he unloaded his burden. Ever since he was defeated by Tang Zheng, he had been working hard and cultivating diligently. He had already reached the 9th grade of the Khanate realm, which was already very impressive. Now that he had the opportunity, he was going to break through to the martial scholar realm. This was a crucial step for any martial artist. Greater than or equal to, he gradually calmed his mind and concentrated on circulating his internal energy. He could hear the sound of his internal organs rumbling like a flood, while his bones and tendons emitting crackling sounds. A moment later, this strange sound gradually disappeared, and Shaoling had completely transformed. He broke through the shackles of cultivation in one fell swoop and reached the 1st grade of the Supreme Power Realm. Xiao took a deep breath. He couldn't believe it. He touched it left and looked at it right. The Grandmaster realm that he had been looking forward to came unexpectedly, which was completely different from his imagination. The most important thing was that all this was equivalent to thanks to Tang Zheng. This gave him mixed feelings and a strange feeling. Congratulations. Tang Zheng beamed. Xiao took a deep look at him and finally resisted the impulse to speak ill of him. He simply said, "Thank you." Tang Zheng struck while the iron was hot. Since that's the case, you will listen to my orders from now on. I will help you take back the sword pavilion and let you control it. In addition, let me tell you something. The Li Palace is already in my hands. What? Xiao recovered from the surprise and looked at Tang Zheng inconceivably. How is that possible? Nothing is impossible in this world. Even high lords have to avoid me. How can these organizations escape from my grasp? Tang Zheng looked as if he had already won. Xiao's cold face changed, and he didn't know how to answer. Tang Zheng ignored Xiao's complicated mood and went straight out of the door, leaving him to digest this change alone. Lu Qingmei hurriedly looked over. When she saw that Xiao was safe and sound, a strange color flashed across her face. She seemed to be surprised, but then she returned to normal and asked, "How is it? He has already submitted to me, Tang Zheng said calmly. Oh, Lu Qingmei's face didn't change at all. In her opinion, it was really amazing that Xiao Xiao came back to life. But after all, Tang Zheng was the creator of miracles, so all this was reasonable. Tang Zheng and Lu Qingmei came to the deck and found that other people were looking at them. Their eyes were very complicated. Du Qifeng hurriedly greeted them. Young Master Tang Xiao Xiao, do you care about him? Tang Zheng asked with a smile. Du Qifeng's heart was cold. He didn't know what this meant. He hesitated for a moment and said truthfully, to tell you the truth, Xiao Xiao once saved my life, so I really care about him. If he heard what you said, he would be very pleased. Du Qifeng's heart was already dead. How could he hear these words? He smiled bitterly. Young Master Tang, you flatter me. May I ask what else you want me to do? Tang Zheng was also not polite. He asked straightforwardly, when are we going to explore the sea? Du Qifeng said, there is still some distance to the shipwreck. I estimate that after a night's rest, we will arrive tomorrow. It is in the high seas. No one has jurisdiction over it. So that's how it is. I thought it was in the nearby sea. Young Master Tang, take a night's rest. We will arrive tomorrow. You can also take the opportunity to enjoy the beautiful sea view. Du Qifeng was indifferent. So many things had happened just now, but he could talk and laugh. He was really not an ordinary person. Ah, suddenly, a high-pitched scream interrupted Du Qifeng. Look at him. Everyone's attention was attracted by this scream. Following his gaze, many people were so frightened that they staggered and almost fell into the sea. Ghosts, they're ghosts. Someone screamed. The atmosphere suddenly dropped to ice, making people shudder. Xiao Xiao stood at the cabin door and looked at everyone curiously. After listening to the scream, his brows subconsciously wrinkled, and he looked more and more cold and ferocious. Ghost! Finally, someone couldn't bear it. He turned over and jumped off the yacht. With a plop, he fell into the sea and swam away. Du Qifeng and Wang Guanchuan were also really shocked. They looked at Xiao Xiao with pale faces and hurriedly hid behind Tang Zheng. In an instant, other people also followed suit and hid behind Tang Zheng, shivering. Their bodies and minds were filled with fear. Xiao Xiao walked towards the crowd without saying a word. Suddenly, screams rose into the sky. Some people heard the sound of teeth chattering. Some people's legs were soft, and they directly collapsed on the deck. Young Master Tang, you should stop him. You are so powerful. You can definitely stop him. Du Qifeng pleaded with fear. Tang Zheng asked with a smile, why should I stop him? Because he is the ghost. Du Qifeng secretly glanced at Xiao Xiao and quickly retracted. No matter how much experience he usually had, how calm he was in the face of danger, in the face of this supernatural phenomenon, he would still feel fear from the bottom of his heart. Puchi! Lu Qingmei couldn't help laughing. The arc of Tang Zheng's mouth was getting bigger and bigger. Xiao Xiao had already walked in front of several people and asked, Mr. Du, I am not a ghost. You're not a ghost. How is it possible? You were clearly dead just now. Du Qifeng was still in shock. Xiao Xiao was speechless and looked at Tang Zheng for help. Tang Zheng turned sideways and let the others face Xiao Xiao. In an instant, several people were scared and fell to the ground, trembling like a sieve. Mr. Du, look at me. Xiao Xiao grabbed Du Qifeng's hand. Du Qifeng trembled violently, as if he had been electrocuted. Suddenly, his eyes changed slightly. Huh? How could Xiao Xiao's hand be hot? Weren't the ghost's hands cold? Du Qifeng gradually calmed down. He slowly raised his head and looked at Xiao Xiao's eyes. Those eyes were indeed full of vitality. Where was the ghost? He was really not dead. Du Qifeng's mouth opened so wide that he could almost stuff a duck egg in it. He looked at Xiao Xiao incredulously and asked, Didn't that sword just pierce your heart? And you lost so much blood. Why are you alive and kicking now, as if nothing had happened? Xiao Xiao didn't answer, but focused his eyes on Tang Zheng. Du Qifeng's heart moved. Was all this young Master Tang's credit? Just now, he took Xiao Xiao into the cabin to save him. But after a while, he came out. That was a fatal injury. How'd he do all this? This was simply the reincarnation of Hua Ta. Du Qifeng scratched his head, but he couldn't figure out how all of this was done. The gaze he looked at Tang Zheng became more and more complicated. He was completely in awe of Tang Zheng's unfathomable methods, and his admiration was like a torrential river. Others finally understood that this person was not dead at all. He was not a ghost at all. They were afraid in vain. However, their thoughts were also the same as Du Qifeng's. How did this happen? Well, don't be afraid. He's not dead. He's just injured. Now his injury has healed. He's a living person. Tang Zheng saw that the time was almost right, so he finally said aloud to ease everyone's tension. The group of people seemed to have eaten a calming pill as they finally revealed an expression of relief. Since he was not dead, then everything was fine. Originally, some people were worried that Tang Zheng would kill them to silence them, but now it seemed that they did not need to worry about that. Looking at his colleague who had swam a long distance, Wang Guanxuan hurriedly shouted, "Come back. It's all right. Everything is just a false alarm." The man turned his head from a distance and saw a group of people looking at him with a smile. Only then did he realize that it was a misunderstanding. He swam back in embarrassment. This farce came to an end for the time being. Tang Zheng and Lu Qingmei snuggled up to the bow of the ship and watched the sun set. Many other people looked at them from a distance, but no one dared to disturb them. Du Qifeng took Xiao Xiaoling back to the cabin. Before he had time to speak, Xiao Xiaoling had already said, "Mr. Du, after this time, I'm afraid I can't follow you." Du Qifeng was surprised and said, "Why?" "Because I want to go with Tang Zheng." "I'll go with him? Aren't you life and death enemies?" "That's already a thing of the past. Now it's different," Xiao Xiaoling said bitterly. "What's the difference?" Du Qifeng was ready to break the pot and asked to the end, because it was too difficult to find such a powerful bodyguard like Xiao Xiaoling. He didn't want to let him go unless he had to. "Because Tang Zheng will definitely let me go, so I'll remind you in advance." Du Qifeng's face was stiff. This sentence was like a huge stone pressing down on him. No matter how many words he had to persuade him, they were choked in his throat. There was no way to spit them out. "You and him?" Du Qifeng asked hesitantly. "You'd better not inquire about me and him. In a word, thank you for taking care of me during this time." Xiao Xiaoling sighed. Du Qifeng heaved a long sigh and understood that things had come to this point and couldn't be disobeyed. He patted Xiao Xiaoling on the shoulder and said, "Well, young Master Tang is a very powerful person. It's good for you to follow him. We are also acquaintances. I hope you can say more good words in front of young Master Tang in the future." Chapter 1004. The sky was high and the sea was wide. The sun shone on the surface of the sea. The yacht's engine had been turned off. It floated on the surface of the sea and arrived at the shipwreck site. Everyone was busy. They put on their diving suits and put down the small submarine. This small submarine was specially used for scientific research. It could seat about 10 people. Lu Qingmei also put on her diving suit. Her curvaceous body was clearly visible. Many people quietly looked at her and quickly looked away. There was no doubt that Lu Qingmei was a flower among thousands of grasses. She was indeed very attractive. Brother M, you really don't want to change your diving suit? The water pressure below is not small. In a while, we will leave the submarine and enter the cabin. It will be very dangerous if we don't have a diving suit to resist the water pressure." Wang Guanxuan advised. Tang Zheng smiled and shook his head. "Don't worry, I have my own way." Seeing him so confident, Wang Guanxuan couldn't continue to persuade him. He could only say, "Then if you feel that it's not appropriate, you can stay in the submarine." Tang Zheng smiled and didn't comment. The group of people dressed up. Du Qifeng gave everyone a pre-war motivational speech. It was a passionate speech that made people's blood boil. "Get on the submarine. Let's go." With an order, 10 people sat on the submarine. The submarine started. Wang Guanxuan sat in the main control seat and drove the submarine bit by bit to the bottom of the sea. The submarine had portholes. Through the special glass, they could see the scenery outside. The blue sea water rippled outside the porthole. Occasionally, a group of tropical fish swam by. It was a beautiful scene that made people feel relaxed and happy. "It's so beautiful," Lu Qingmei couldn't help but praise. She held Tang Zheng's hand. Tang Zheng patted her hand and said, "Let's go outside later. It will be even more beautiful." Lu Qingmei nodded happily. She leaned on his shoulder as if there was no one else around. She enjoyed the beautiful scenery outside. She felt that at this moment, she was really happy to the extreme. They dived deeper and deeper. There was no sunlight around. It was dark. The submarine turned on the headlights to guide the way forward. Whoosh! Suddenly, a black shadow passed in front of the submarine and set off a wave. The submarine shook a few times. The crowd exclaimed, "What's going on? What was that thing just now? It seemed huge." "Yeah, I didn't see it clearly. What exactly is it?" Fear spread through the crowd. Wang Guanxuan remained calm and said loudly, "Don't scare yourself. It's definitely just a big fish. We have submarines. What are you afraid of?" Bang! As soon as he finished speaking, a loud sound rang out. The submarine shook violently and fell straight down. Ah! Screams rose and fell one after another, as if they were competing in a high-pitched competition, each scream louder than the last. Wang Guanxuan hurriedly steadied the submarine, but the group was trembling with fear. The last time they had dived, it had been very smooth, but they had never encountered such a strange thing. Could it be a ghost? A lot of people must have died in this sunken ship and turned into vengeful spirits, coming to claim our lives, just like in the movies. You've watched too many horror movies, Wang Guanxuan said snappily. What exactly is that? Everyone looked at each other. Just now, they were highly nervous and their hearts were filled with fear. How could they have seen clearly what had happened? Lu Qingmei subconsciously held Tang Zheng's hand tightly. He patted her shoulder and comforted her. "Don't be afraid. It's not a vengeful spirit. Besides, even if it is something like that, I have a way to deal with it." He was a man who had been to the Ghost Festival. How could he be afraid of vengeful spirits? He raised his voice and explained, "Everyone, don't panic. It's not a vengeful spirit. It's just a shark." "Shark?" Tang Zheng nodded. "Yes, it seems to be a great white shark." How could people who had been in the sea not understand the power of sharks, especially this great white shark? It definitely had a strong attack power. It was even more frightening than the vengeful spirits. Everyone's faces were pale. Even Wang Guanxuan trembled as he said, "How could we be so unlucky? The last time we came down, we didn't encounter any sharks. We need to quickly go back. If we are targeted by a great white shark and we don't have any defensive power, we will definitely die." Hearing his words, Tang Zheng speechlessly rolled his eyes. Was he directly ignoring him? He coughed to attract everyone's attention. Then he calmly said, "Actually, sharks really aren't scary. They're easy to deal with." "How is that possible?" "Every year, a lot of people die in the mouth of sharks." "Yes, they will be easy to deal with." These people were really scared by the name of the great white shark. That's for others. For Tang Zheng, sharks are a piece of cake. Lu Qingmei didn't want to see her beloved be looked down upon, so she argued. Really, everyone seemed to have grasped at a life-saving straw. "I will go out and deal with the sharks. You guys continue to dive. I will come later," Tang Zheng said lightly. Seeing that he was so casual, everyone looked at him nervously. Tang Zheng had already stood up from his seat. "Be careful." Lu Qingmei affectionately pinched him and reminded him. Tang Zheng smiled and nodded. He got out of the submarine and was met with a bloody mouth. 2 rows of white teeth attacked him and bit down on his head. Bang! He casually threw out a punch, and his fist directly hit the teeth. With a crack, the teeth broke. The great white shark was in pain. It suddenly turned around and swept its tail at Tang Zheng. It was like an iron fan sweeping over, causing a large wave. Bang! With another simple punch, the great white shark's tail turned into a bloody mess. Tang Zheng leaped. Although he was in the deep sea, to him, it was as if he was on land. Bang, bang, bang. Punch after punch. Every punch landed on the great white shark's body. Traces of blood seeped out. "Huh!" Tang Zheng exclaimed. He was very clear about the power of his fist. It was enough to break through stone, but when he hit the great white shark's body, it did not completely break through the defense of its fish scales. This was not normal. Since when did the great white shark have such a strong defense? The great white shark's eyes stared straight at Tang Zheng. It was filled with anger and bloodthirsty, killing intent. Its eyes contained too many things. It was like the eyes of a living person. It was poles apart from ordinary animals. Tang Zheng could not help but frown. This great white shark was strange and definitely not ordinary. The great white shark was not afraid. Instead, it smelled its own blood and went completely berserk. With a swing of its tail, it crazily bit at Tang Zheng. Shua! The war soul sword appeared in Tang Zheng's hand. With a slash of the sword, the seawater automatically split into two. The sword light ruthlessly slashed at the great white shark's head. With a poochy sound, the sword light passed through its body. A large amount of blood surged out. The great white shark was split into two halves. In front of the war soul sword, all of the great white shark's defenses collapsed. The great white shark's corpse quickly sank to the bottom of the sea. Tang Zheng took a deep look and chased after the submarine. His eyes became darker and darker. He could not even see his fingers. He crossed his fingers and snapped his fingers. A ball of true fire emerged from his fingertips. This ball of true fire was not afraid of the seawater. It continued to burn, illuminating the path ahead. A moment later, he finally saw the submarine in the distance. However, he was quickly attracted by a huge silhouette beside it. It was as if a small mountain range was lying at the bottom of the sea. Most of it was covered by sand. This was the battleship. Hey, I finally saw you. I'm very curious about what's inside. Tang Zheng muttered to himself and swooped down. There was no one in the submarine. The others must have entered the battleship. On the surface of the battleship, there were many messy footprints. He lowered his center of gravity and stood on the ship. He took a step forward and chased after it. As expected, there were a few cannons on both sides of the deck. It was just that they had long been corroded by the seawater and were covered in rust. He walked straight into the cabin. The cabin was even darker and gloomier. If an ordinary person were to come here, they would probably walk away. He looked left and right, but did not see anyone else. The structure of the battleship was extremely large and complicated. He did not know where they had gone. Tang Zheng simply walked and observed his surroundings. He did not know much about battleships, so he could not tell what era it was from. However, there was no doubt that in ancient times, such a battleship was definitely the king of the sea. What kind of strong enemy could make such a battleship sink into the sea? He could not help but think of the treasures that Wang Guanxuan had mentioned. How could there be so many treasures on a battleship? All of these mysteries were like a large net covering him, causing him to be puzzled. Suddenly, a place on the wall of the cabin attracted his attention. He immediately went over to take a closer look. There were actually a few scratches, as if they were made by sharp claws. The shipyard was made of steel, so to be able to leave scratches on it showed how powerful the claws were. Tang Zheng was shocked and thought that it was strange. These scratches must have been left after the battleship fell silent. Otherwise, how could a battleship tolerate such scratches? However, in the depths of the vast sea, what could leave such scratches on a battleship? This was completely abnormal. Tang Zheng scratched his head, puzzled. He took a few more steps forward and saw some more scratches. However, some of the scratches were covered by sand. If he did not pay attention, he would not have noticed them. This meant that these scratches were not made at one time, but over several periods of time. Could there be some kind of monster in the deep sea? However, the claws of ordinary things could not be so sharp. For a moment, Tang Zheng could not figure out what was going on. Suddenly, a cry of surprise attracted Tang Zheng's attention. This cry was very weak. If not for Tang Zheng's extraordinary hearing, he would have ignored it. Oh no, could they be in danger? Chapter 1005. Tang Zheng passed through layers of cabins and came to the bottom of the battleship. Suddenly, a black shadow rushed towards him. Tang Zheng's heart trembled. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the other party. A scream sounded. Tang Zheng's head loosened. It turned out that the black shadow was a person. He finally saw clearly that it was one of his own people. However, he was wearing a diving mask, so he couldn't see his face clearly. The other party was clearly terrified. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws. They kept waving their arms and screaming. "Don't panic." "What happened?" Tang Jung shouted. It was like the morning bell, an evening drum exploding in his ears. The other party was stunned and finally regained his composure. When he saw Tang Zheng's appearance clearly, he couldn't hide the surprise in his eyes. He cheered. "Young Master Tang, it's you. Quickly go and save people. We are in danger." "Where?" "Just ahead. There are monsters." The voice came from the diving mask. It sounded a little dull. It made people's hearts fall to the bottom. "You go back to the submarine first," Tang Zheng warned, and with a sound, like a fish, he drew a white wave in the sea and disappeared in front of them. When he stepped through a cabin door, he finally saw everything in the cabin clearly. There were lights on. Although it was a little blurry, he could still see clearly. This cabin was very large. In the middle, there were 10 or so big boxes. Next to the boxes, there were piles of white bones. They were human skeletons. A few people were hiding in the corner. Some people were lying on the ground. It was unknown whether they were dead or alive. Only one person was standing in front of the wooden box, looking around vigilantly. In the darkness, there seemed to be a great danger lurking. "Sister May." Tang Zheng recognized that person at a glance. It was Lu Qingmei. He was relieved. As long as she was fine, he hurriedly went to greet her. Whoosh! Suddenly, a black shadow jumped out from the darkness behind him. Its sharp claws directly scratched his back. "Tang Zheng, be careful!" Lu Qingmei shouted in fright. Tang Zheng's head trembled. He didn't even turn his head as he coldly snorted. "I want to see what kind of monster actually dares to sneak attack me." Without even turning his head, he swung his sword backward. With a whoosh, sword light filled the space behind him, and with a pong, it slashed down on the opponent's claws, creating circles of ripples that spread out in all directions. Those who were close to him fell to the ground one after another, crying out in alarm. The monster scurried away and hid in the darkness again. Lu Qingmei rushed over and asked with concern, "How are you?" Tang Zheng shook his head. He looked at her and asked, "What about you? Are you hurt?" Lu Qingmei smiled and said, "I'm not hurt. It's just that the gift you gave me is ruined." She spread out her hands, and there were a few pieces of broken jade lying on her palms. These were the jade pieces that Tang Zheng had given to a few of his family members for self-protection. She didn't expect that they would come in handy this time and save her life. "It's okay. I'll give you a new gift when we get back. It's a deal." Lu Qingmei beamed with joy. "How are the others?" "They're not hurt. They're just scared out of their wits," Lu Qingmei said. Tang Zheng secretly nodded and breathed a sigh of relief. He looked at the darkness around him and asked, "Do you know what kind of monster it is?" "I don't know, but it's a reptile. It looks like a big dog with a long tail. It's very cunning and very powerful. If you're hit by its claws, you'll definitely suffer a lot," Lu Qingmei said while pointing to the ground. The steel deck was scratched by the sharp claws, and there were several huge cracks. "It has 4 legs and a long tail." Tang Zheng frowned. A light flashed in his mind as he thought of the skeleton. Wasn't it very similar to this? There was also that extraterrestrial creature in the crystal. Could it be that there was a fish that escaped the net in the deep sea? Was that monster the mysterious extraterrestrial creature? Thinking of this, Tang Zheng was surprised and excited. If it was really an extraterrestrial creature, then he must capture it alive. He had always wanted to study extraterrestrial creatures, but that guy was in the crystal and he had no way to do so. Now that there was a ready-made one, he certainly couldn't miss it. He didn't know how strong the extraterrestrial creature was, so he looked at the others and wanted to ask Lu Qingmei to take the others away. But then he thought of how many extraterrestrial creatures there were. He didn't know it all. If they met on the way out, wouldn't they be walking into a trap? Thinking of this, he quickly said, "Everyone gather together. Don't be afraid. I'll protect your safety." Just as his voice fell, he heard a person scream and was dragged into the darkness with a whoosh. Immediately, the others were scared to the point of rolling and crawling, rushing to Tang Zheng's side. "Protect them. I'll go save them." Tang Zheng shouted loudly and also rushed into the darkness. The true fire in his hands illuminated the darkness, and he saw that person being lifted high up in the air. With a leap, he rushed towards that person. Whoosh! A strong wind swept towards Tang Zheng's head. He quickly raised his sword and ding-dang made a sound. Sparks flew in all directions as a huge vibration force came from his palm. He finally saw clearly that it was a tail. This tail was actually able to contend with the Battle Soul Sword without any damage. It was really extraordinary. He also finally saw the other's appearance. It was exactly the same as the extraterrestrial creature in the crystal. It was just that its body was slightly smaller. However, its pair of eyes seemed to be magical, as if it could suck in a person's soul. For eyes met. The monster also saw Tang Zheng clearly. Its eyes flashed with an ominous glint. It opened its mouth and roared at Tang Zheng, letting out a sharp cry. Tang Zheng coldly snorted. He was not intimidated by the other's eyes. The Battle Soul sword in his hand trembled, and the sword light rushed towards the claws. The extraterrestrial creature had already experienced the power of the Battle Soul sword and quickly let go of its claws. The man escaped and screamed as he fell from a high place. Tang Zheng flew up and caught the man. He then threw him into the distance and steadily landed in the crowd. The extraterrestrial creature did not run away. Instead, it stared at Tang Zheng. For eyes met, neither was afraid of the other. The extraterrestrial creature bared its teeth and roared at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng coldly smiled and hooked his finger, saying, "Come, let me see how much weight you have. Don't disappoint me. If you are too weak, then the sky beyond heaven will disappoint me." Roar! The extraterrestrial creature roared. The sound waves pushed the seawater forward. Tang Zheng casually slapped out, and the surging power of his palm counteracted the power of the seawater. A black shadow flashed. The extraterrestrial creature had already followed the seawater and rushed over. Tang Zheng also rushed up. One man and one beast immediately fought, setting off stormy waves. Boom, boom, boom. Chapter 1006. Looking at the jewels scattered all over the ground, everyone's eyes lit up, but no one dared to come forward to snatch the jewels. Wang Guanchuan worriedly looked at the fierce battle and asked, "This monster is too fierce. Is Tang Zheng its opponent?" Lu Qingmei proudly raised her head and said without hesitation, "How can this monster hurt him? He is the most powerful." Obviously, in her heart, the person she loves is omnipotent and invincible. Wang Guanchuan bitterly smiled. His heart almost jumped to his throat. If Tang Zheng failed, then they would not be able to escape from this monster's evil hands. After a fierce battle, Tang Zheng gradually came to a conclusion that this foreign creature was indeed powerful. Whether it was its claws or that barbed tail, they were all like weapons. It was actually able to contend against the War Soul Sword, which showed its power. This guy is probably a cub, much smaller than the one in the crystal stone, so its strength is naturally greatly reduced. I don't know how powerful it will be when it grows up. Tang Zheng understood and was full of confidence. He was not prepared to continue to delay, and was ready to cut the Gordian knot and capture alive. Suddenly a voice sounded in his mind. Master Dash, this voice was very choppy, like a child who had just learned to speak. Tang Zheng was startled, and his movements subconsciously slowed down by half a beat. The alien took this opportunity to launch an attack, and its tail brought a wave of water to stab at him. The tip of its tail shone with a cold light, making people feel intimidated. "I am Xiao Bai." The voice sounded again. Tang Zheng suddenly realized and was overjoyed. Xiao Bai could actually speak. His divine sense immediately extended into the Sumeru world, and as expected, he saw that Little White had awoken. It was staring at him with its big round eyes. Its appearance didn't change much, except that there was a clump of fiery red hair on its forehead, which was very different from the rest of its snow-white hair. It was very conspicuous, like a burning flame. "Xiao Bai, you are finally awake." "Master, let me deal with it." Xiao Bai took the initiative to volunteer. Tang Zheng's head shook. It could still sense the outside world and the summer world. This kind of thing has never happened before. It seems that after this evolution, its power has greatly increased. With a thought, Xiao Bai appeared beside him. The tail of the creature just happened to stab over, and Xiao Bai slowly stretched out its claws, like a cynical person, as if it did not put the sharp tail in its eyes at all. The others did not understand how a puppy-like animal appeared out of thin air. Looking at its small body, there was no way to compare with a monster. It would definitely be directly pierced by the tail. However, in the next second, they were all stunned. That furry little paw actually grabbed the sharp tail, and the tail's attack came to an abrupt halt. The scene froze, and they looked at the scene in disbelief. This scene was so unreal, like a dream. "Bad guy, how dare you hurt my master?" Xiao Bai spoke the human language, and with a wave of its little claws, the creature involuntarily flew up like a kite, spinning in midair. Looking at this scene, the others trembled in their hearts. Wasn't the monster very powerful? How could it become so weak that it could not even withstand a gust of wind? Whoosh! Xiao Bai let go of its claws, and the creature flew like a cannonball into a distant wall. With a bang, the wall collapsed, and a large hole was created. Xiao Bai proudly clapped its little claws and jumped on Tang Zheng's shoulder, holding his head, and said proudly, "Master, am I very powerful?" For a moment, Tang Zheng was not used to Xiao Bai speaking the human language. After a moment of surprise, he nodded bitterly. "You are indeed very powerful." Of course, Xiao Bai proudly raised its head, without any sense of modesty. The others heard the conversation between the two sides, and their expressions were very strange. It was clearly an animal, so how could it speak? Was it a spirit? Whoosh! Suddenly, a huge black shadow rushed over. Xiao Bai did not look back, and stepped back, landing on the body of the creature. With a cry, the creature seemed to have suffered a great deal of damage, and with a roar, it flew out again like a cannonball. This time, it was completely silent, and no one knew whether it was dead or alive. Let's go and take a look. Tang Zheng was afraid that Xiao Bai did not know the severity of the situation and directly killed the creature. So he hurriedly chased after it, only to find that there was a mess under his feet, and there was no sign of the creature. It was not afraid of Tang Zheng, but in the end, it was frightened by Xiao Bai's casual attack and fled. "We can't let it escape. I must find out what is going on," Tang Zheng said in a low voice. Xiao Bai imitated his normal tone and snorted. "How can we let it escape? I will go catch it." After saying this, it jumped off Tang Zheng's shoulder and disappeared into the darkness in the blink of an eye. The rest of the people gathered together timidly and asked nervously, "Young Master Tang, can that monster escape?" Tang Zheng smiled faintly. "With Xiao Bai chasing after it, it won't be able to escape even if it has wings." "What kind of animal is that Xiao Bai? How can it speak?" someone asked, trembling with fear. Tang Zheng smiled, but did not say anything. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, the sound of an intense battle came from an unknown direction, causing the cabin to tremble. The sand on the ground also quickly rose up, causing the seawater to become turbid. Tang Zheng's expression changed slightly. "We must quickly leave this place. The battleship is about to collapse." The others were shocked. If the battleship collapsed, they would be buried alive, so they all rushed towards the exit. Tang Zheng had just taken a step out when he retracted his foot, turning his head to look at the jewels on the ground. Since they were already here, it would be a sin to let the jewels be covered in dust. Thus, he turned around and arrived in front of the jewels. Other than the jewels on the ground, there were several boxes that were still intact. The others had already escaped, so they did not see him stay behind. Thus, he quickly activated Sumra World. With a flash of light, the jewels on the ground were all sucked into Sumra World. The battleship shook more and more violently, so Tang Zheng quickly chased after them. Boom! When everyone escaped from the battleship, a loud sound came from the battleship, followed by creaking sounds. The battleship was falling apart at a speed visible to the naked eye, disintegrating and collapsing. Finally, with a loud rumble, it turned into a pile of ruins, splashing up sand and sand, causing the seawater to become turbid. Everyone ran far away, frightened. Many people's hearts sank, guessing that the monster and Xiao Bai had perished together. Everyone subconsciously looked at Tang Zheng, but found that he was calm as if nothing had happened, as if he was not the least bit worried about Xiao Bai's safety. Of course, he was not worried, because he was very sure that this little bit of danger would not be able to stop Xiao Bai. Sure enough, a ball of light lit up from the turbid seawater, like a ball of flame, quickly escaping from the turbid seawater, gradually approaching. Flame! Someone exclaimed. That ball of light turned out to be a ball of fiery red flame, swaying with the waves. Everyone's reaction was very interesting, cowering and hiding behind Tang Zheng, afraid that some danger would appear again. Tang Zheng was calm and composed, indifferently looking at the ball of flame that was getting closer and closer, because he had already guessed what was going on. Xiao Bai, he softly shouted. In this deep sea, he seemed to have turned into a fish, able to breathe freely and naturally could speak without hindrance. The others did not have this ability. If not for wearing a diving mask, perhaps they would not have been able to say a word. Master! Xiao Bai cheered, jumping out of the turbid seawater. The fiery red hair on its forehead turned into a ball of flame, swaying gently, and in its small claws was a captive, an extraterrestrial creature. It seemed to have completely lost the ability to resist, like a dead dog being dragged by Xiao Bai, dragging a long trace on the ground. Its pair of eyes dimmed a lot, but as if there was still magic, it was easy to be trapped in them. This bad guy still wanted to escape, but in the end, I still managed to drag him out. It's just that he kept on resisting, and in the end, I taught him a lesson. Now, he's obedient. Little White pointed at the defeated general and said proudly. The extraterrestrial creature unwillingly stared at Xiao Bai, but there was nothing it could do. Humph, are you still not convinced? Xiao Bai pouted, and its small claws seemed to be gently patting, but when it fell on the extraterrestrial creature, it immediately let out a sharp scream. The unwillingness and anger in its eyes immediately disappeared. That's right, he is my master. If you dare to disrespect him, Humph, I will break your bones and use them to make soup. Xiao Bai said fiercely. The extraterrestrial creature was so scared that its whole body trembled, and it shrank into a ball, no longer looking as arrogant as before. Tang Zheng had seen Xiao Bai's deeds of taming the thundercloud beast, and knew that its small body contained a lot of power, so he was not surprised. The others looked as if they had seen a ghost, and their worldview was completely turned upside down. Master, what are you going to do with it? Xiao Bai asked. Tang Zheng thought for a while, staring straight at the extraterrestrial creature. It glared at him fiercely, but when it saw Xiao Bai's eyes, it quickly lowered its head in fear. Looking at its funny appearance, Tang Zheng could not help laughing. It seems to be very human, but I don't know if it can speak. Roar! The extraterrestrial creature growled twice. It's useless to just roar. If you can't speak, how can I know what happened in the past? Tang Zheng said in distress. The extraterrestrial creature turned its head directly, ignoring Tang Zheng. Slap! Suddenly, a claw slapped its head, and it cried out in pain. Xiao Bai raised its small claws and threatened. I told you, don't be disrespectful to my master, or I will deal with you cruelly and roast you. As it spoke, the flame on its forehead jumped more violently. The extraterrestrial creature was so scared that it shook its head quickly. Obviously, from its black and smoky appearance, it must have suffered a great loss from the flame, and was very afraid. Chapter 1007. Xiao Bai was domineering and mighty, making the extraterrestrial obedient. The others looked at each other in dismay when they saw the strong contrast between the two. What was going on? The world was changing too fast, and they couldn't keep up. Since they couldn't get any answers, and the battleship had been destroyed, it was better to go back first. So, Tang Zheng told Xiao Bai, look after it. If it dares to do anything, punish it severely. Don't worry, if it dares to move, I'll roast it. Xiao Bai grinned at the extraterrestrial as if he was sneering. The extraterrestrial trembled and curled into a ball, looking at Tang Zheng with eyes full of resentment. Let's go. There's no need to investigate here. Let's go back first, Tang Zheng said. The others looked at each other. This time, they came for the jewels, but now that the battleship had collapsed, the jewels were buried below. In addition, this place was too strange. If another monster appeared, there would be no place to cry. So, no one had any objections, and they all went into the submarine. Wang Guanxuan once again drove the submarine, suppressing the stormy waves in his heart. He carefully controlled the submarine and floated up little by little. However, many people, intentionally or unintentionally, secretly looked at Xiao Bai and the extraterrestrial at the back of the submarine. When their eyes met the extraterrestrial's eyes, their hearts trembled, and they quickly looked away. Junior brother, this monster is wild and difficult to tame. Will there be any problems if you bring it back? Wang Guanxuan asked worriedly. Tang Zheng smiled faintly and said, Brother Wang, didn't you always want to know what kind of animal the skeleton was? Now that it's standing in front of you, can't you recognize it? Wang Guanxuan was startled and subconsciously turned his head to look, just in time to see the monster looking at him. He was frightened and hurriedly withdrew his gaze and asked suspiciously, It's somewhat similar, but are you sure? Of course, this guy and that skeleton are of the same kind, so there must be a connection between them. It's just that it's not clear yet, but I believe that in time, there will definitely be a way to find out. Tang Zheng vowed. Wang Guanxuan was surprised and asked, Where exactly did this monster come from? Tang Zheng smiled and said, The answer to all the mysteries will be revealed. Don't be impatient. Seeing that he couldn't get any answers, Wang Guanxuan temporarily dismissed the idea of getting to the bottom of things and focused on driving the submarine. Moments later, the submarine finally surfaced from the water. Du Qifeng, Xiao Xiaoling, and the others hurriedly greeted them. When they saw that this group of people was slightly embarrassed and empty-handed, they asked, What happened below? We have detected intense activity and loud noises coming from the bottom of the sea. It's a long story. Let's go up first. Wang Guanxuan sighed faintly, and the others boarded the yacht one after another. When it was Tang Zheng's turn, Du Qifeng and others suddenly found that there were two more animals around him, one small and one big. Xiao Bai was loved by everyone, and the other was born very fierce. Many people screamed and subconsciously retreated. Even Du Qifeng took a step back to stabilize his body. He asked in shock, This is Tang Zheng smiled and comforted him. Mr. Du, don't panic. This is the phantom you met at the bottom of the sea before, and now we have caught it alive. Everyone's eyes fell on the extraterrestrial creature. Roar. Aware of everyone's gaze, it immediately let out an angry roar, scaring the others to scream and retreat again and again. Even Xiao Xiaoling subconsciously stood in front of Du Qifeng to protect him. I told you not to roar. You didn't listen. Xiao Bai patted the top of the extraterrestrial creature's head with a claw. It shrank its neck and looked at Xiao Bai in fear. It made a whining sound, as if it was protesting. Xiao Bai snorted coldly and patted it twice. It completely lowered its head and no longer had any temper. Du Qifeng and others stared at this scene blankly. They couldn't figure out the situation at all. Wasn't this monster supposed to be very powerful? How could it be bullied by such a little thing? It didn't even fight back when scolded. Du Qifeng asked with trepidation, Young Master Tang, what kind of monster is this? Tang Zheng smiled and didn't answer. He just said, Don't be afraid. It won't hurt anyone now. Everyone was skeptical, but when they saw the monster's obedient appearance, their hanging hearts slowly returned to their chests. Suddenly, their eyes focused on Xiao Bai. They were shocked, and their faces became even paler, because just now they heard it speak human language, and it could beat and scold the monster at will. Wasn't this more powerful? It's a monster. Some people screamed as if they woke up from a dream and hurriedly retreated. Walala! The crowd retreated like a receding tide, looking at Little White in fear and unease. Xiao Bai glanced at the crowd contemptuously, curled his lips, and said, You're really ignorant. You're so easily scared. After that, he walked a few steps forward. Many people were scared and hid in the corner, tears almost coming out of their eyes. Only a few people who went into the sea together were calm. There was a bitter smile on their faces. They were scared and numb. Xiao Bai, don't mess around. Tang Zheng hurriedly stopped him. Otherwise, if this little guy spat out a mouthful of fire, it would scare them even more. Xiao Bai pouted and said discontentedly, "They're too stupid and timid." After that, with a kick of his hind legs, he rode on the back of the extraterrestrial creature. It wanted to break free from Xiao Bai, but its whole body stiffened and it stopped moving. Obviously, it was scared of Xiao Bai. Little White patted its head and said, "Let's go. Let's walk around this ship and see if there's anything fun." The extraterrestrial creature's eyes were full of grievances and unwillingness, but there was nothing it could do. It could only obediently walk with its four limbs. Xiao Bai rode on its back majestically. He glanced at the crowd like a king patrolling his territory, leisurely and leisurely. Some people saw the monster walking towards them and were scared out of their wits. They collapsed on the ground like a pile of mud, unable to move. But the monster didn't even look at them. It looked straight ahead and walked past them into the cabin. Instantly, the people in the cabin were thrown off their feet, and it was a complete mess. Sharp cries of alarm sounded out, and one by one, they rushed out as if they were fleeing, screaming incessantly. Tang Zheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Xiao Bai's style of doing things was unique and incredible. He could only wipe its ass and keep comforting it. "Don't panic. Don't be afraid. They won't hurt you." You could treat them as ordinary animals. Everyone was trembling with fear. Although they lamented in their hearts, how could they be ordinary animals? They still had to hold back their palpitations and cheer themselves up to not completely fall down. After such a farce, most people returned to the cabin to rest with lingering fear. Tang Zheng, Lu Qingmei, Du Qifeng, Wang Guanxuan, and Xiao Xiaoling stayed, facing the sea breeze. Du Qifeng took the lead to break the silence and asked what happened at the bottom of the sea. Wang Guanxuan recounted the experience at the bottom of the sea in detail. Wang Guanxuan and Xiao Xiaoling listened with surging emotions. Especially when a monster appeared, their hearts couldn't help but lift. Xiao Xiaoling was an assassin. He was the most sensitive to danger. Just now, he felt this innate danger from the monster and knew that it was not a good thing. As for Little White, he didn't feel too strongly about it. It was as if it really was a little thing that didn't pose any threat. However, he knew that this was all an illusion. Xiao Bai was the most powerful. Otherwise, the monster, who was difficult to train, would not bow to him. He subconsciously looked at Tang Zheng, saying that none of the people or animals around him were simple. If he really underestimated him, he would be a complete fool. Du Qifeng asked curiously, "How did Xiao Bai subdue the monster?" Wang Guanxuan glanced at Tang Zheng and said, "We didn't see it with our own eyes. We just saw the result." Du Qifeng felt a little regretful. He turned his eyes and asked, "Those treasures are buried in the ruins of the battleship. Is there any way to dig them out?" "Unless we use large machinery, it's impossible. But it's in the deep sea. There's no such machinery at all." So, Wang Guanxuan didn't continue, but the meaning was very obvious. Those treasures would be buried in the sea forever. Du Qifeng sighed. He was very disappointed. He was a businessman. Exploring the sea floor was to find treasures. Now that the cooked duck flew away, how could he not be disappointed? Tang Zheng's face didn't change. Those treasures were ownerless. Those who could get them would get them. Taking them away himself was not without morality. Moreover, if he hadn't followed them this time, he was afraid that everyone who had just gone to the sea would have been doomed. It could be regarded as saving their lives. Young Master Tang, what are the origins of that monster and your pet? Why are they so extraordinary? Du Qifeng put down the matter of the treasures. He was filled with endless interest towards those two fellows. Tang Zheng chuckled and said, "Director Du is very knowledgeable. You should have heard of monster beasts before, right?" Du Qifeng was suddenly startled. He was not unfamiliar with this term. He had heard rumors about monster beasts from many sources and knew how powerful they were. Seeing Tang Zheng directly state the identities of those two fellows, all of his curiosity disappeared. Monster beasts were not something he could provoke. He also couldn't have any ideas about them. Otherwise, it would be too late for regrets if he ended up dead. He smiled bitterly at Tang Zheng and said, I see. I understand. What does young Master Tang plan to do next? Let's go back. Tang Zheng said, Okay, no problem. I will arrange it now. When we go back, I would like to invite young Master Tang to do me the honor. It was fate that brought us together. This time, I am indebted to young Master Tang for saving so many of my employees. I should thank young Master Tang for giving me this opportunity. Du Qifeng said sincerely. Tang Zheng hesitated for a moment, but still agreed. He had gained a lot this time. It was also thanks to Du Qifeng. He obviously had something to ask of him. Since that was the case, there was no harm in listening to his request. Night fell. The yacht sailed across the sea. The dark clouds in the sky were getting darker and closer. It was as if a storm was coming. Suddenly, a black shadow flew over from the horizon and landed on the deck without a sound. Chapter 1008. This black figure was shrouded in a black robe. He held a folding fan in his hand and looked like a feather fan. However, there was an evil aura around him that blended in with the darkness. He didn't seem to make any movements. He just floated towards the yacht like a ghost. Who's there? A crew member suddenly noticed him. Just as he was about to shout, he was lightly tapped by the folding fan in his hand. Poof! A bloody hole appeared between his eyebrows. He fell to the ground and died. Although this sound was faint, it was enough to attract some people's attention. Xiao Bai and the extraterrestrial creature suddenly opened their eyes. Xiao Bai was still riding on the extraterrestrial creature's back, as if it was really his mount. Two pairs of black eyes flashed as they looked into the darkness. Tang Zheng also suddenly opened his eyes and sat up from the bed. Lu Qingmei rubbed her eyes and asked lazily, What's wrong? Tang Zheng raised a finger and signaled for her to be quiet. He said in a low voice, Someone's on the yacht. You stay here. I'll go take a look. Lu Qingmei's whole body shook. Her sleepiness was completely gone. She asked, Really? Seeing Tang Zheng nod, she quickly put on her clothes and covered her exquisite figure. She watched as Tang Zheng walked out of the cabin. As soon as Tang Zheng looked up, he saw a person walking towards him from the end of the corridor. At his feet was a corpse. Xiaobai rode on the extraterrestrial creature and stood in between them. He glared at the man in black. The man in black's eyes fell on the extraterrestrial creature. His eyes lit up and he praised, Red Lunar Beast, I've finally found you. I didn't think that the Red Lunar Beast would still exist in this world. Haha. Red Lunar Beast. Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. This person actually knew the origin of the extraterrestrial creature. Could it be that he was also from the outer sky? He immediately sized up this person carefully. Suddenly, his eyes fell on the folding fan, and his heart skipped a beat. He cried out in surprise, It's you, Demon Venerable? He had a deep impression of this fan. When the demons returned, the Dragon Group cooperated with the National Security Bureau to snipe the demons in the sea. A world-shaking war broke out. The leader of the demons was this demon sovereign. Many soldiers died at his hands. In the end, he was the only one who survived. In order to claim credit, Xing Feng deliberately reported to his superiors that he had wiped out all the demons. But in reality, there was still a fish that escaped the net. The demon lord turned around and looked at Tang Zheng in shock. He snorted coldly. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. You managed to escape that time, but this time, you can forget about surviving. Let's see who else can save you. The demon lord was very confident. Back then, Tang Zheng had left a deep impression on him. This was because Tang Zheng was able to break through his illusionary god-demon realm, which shocked him. Tang Zheng's lips curled up into a mocking smile. He was no longer the same person as before. Now, he was a rank 4 Yuanying realm cultivator. His strength had improved tremendously. Moreover, he had Xiaobai to help him. He did not believe that he could not defeat a demon lord. However, the demon lord definitely did not come here in the middle of the night to relax. He must have done it on purpose. What was his purpose? That was the key. Furthermore, he recognized the Red Lunar Beast. This was like a cloud that had cleared up. Tang Zheng was very interested. He wanted to get some information from him. You are so confident that you can kill me. But who was the one who ran away in a panic? And who was the one who did not show up for such a long time? I don't know where you went to lick your wounds. Now, you finally have the guts to show up? Aren't you afraid of death? Tang Zheng mocked. The demon lord's expression changed. His eyes shone with coldness and killing intent. He roared angrily. Nonsense! Why would I run away? I am the demon lord. How can I allow you to talk nonsense? I will let you know the consequences of talking nonsense later. Today is a pleasant surprise. I did not come here for you, but I did not expect to meet you here. Now, I can take care of you. Then, who are you here for? You are not qualified enough for me to come here for you. I am here for the red lunar beast. You are so lucky to have found the red lunar beast. He. The demon lord's eyes shone as he spoke. It was as if he had seen a rare treasure. What is the red lunar beast? Tang Zheng asked. The demon lord was slightly shocked. He then laughed out loud. So you don't know how precious the red lunar beast is. How ignorant. Actually, it is true. The red lunar beast comes from the sky beyond heaven. How could you know how precious it is? But I don't see how precious it is. Tang Zheng refuted on purpose. The demon lord snorted and said with disdain, that is because you are ignorant. How can you tell how precious the red lunar beast is? As long as I consume the red lunar beast's inner core, my power will increase by leaps and bounds. The red lunar beast's inner core is a holy item for cultivation. It is a treasure that many people dream of having. Tang Zheng was shocked. He could not help but stare at the red lunar beast. However, he saw that it was very confused. Obviously, it did not know about this either. He was still skeptical. He purposely said with disdain, "It is just a beast's inner core. It is not like I have never seen one before. It is not as magical as you say. Your way of lying is too low." Who said that I am lying? The demon lord was furious. He stared at Tang Zheng fiercely and said, "Everyone in the sky beyond heaven knows how precious the red lunar beast is. The red lunar beast is born by absorbing the essence of moonlight. From the moment it is born, it is extremely talented. It can cultivate faster with half the effort. Every time it absorbs the essence of moonlight to cultivate, the moon will turn red like blood. This is the origin of the red lunar beast's name." Tang Zheng was shocked. He looked at the red lunar beast in disbelief. It can absorb the essence of moonlight to cultivate. That is too powerful. Normal people could only absorb the spiritual qi in the air to cultivate. They did not even dare to think about absorbing the essence of the sun and moon. There was no way they could absorb the essence of the sun and moon. However, Tang Zheng knew that the essence of the sun and moon was one of the most precious sources of cultivation. He did not expect the red lunar beast to be so talented. No wonder the demon lord was here for the red lunar beast. Coincidentally, I saw a picture of the red lunar beast skeleton on the internet. I asked around and finally found this place. I never thought that I would actually see it. The heavens are helping me. Just wait until I consume the red lunar beast's inner core. No one in this world will be able to defeat me. The demon lord's eyes shone with madness. Tang Zheng rolled his eyes speechlessly. This demon lord was so trendy. He even knew how to surf the internet. Without a doubt, this picture of the red lunar beast skeleton was accidentally posted on the internet by one of the exploration team members. Who would have thought that the demon lord would find out about it? That's why he followed me all the way here. Of course, the demon lord came here hoping that he could get lucky. He did not expect to see the real body of the red lunar beast. How could he not be happy? Tang Zheng thought through the details and rejoiced that he was one step ahead of the rest and was the first to act. Otherwise, the scarlet lunar beast would not be able to escape from the demon lord. If the scarlet lunar beast was really as powerful as he said, then the demon lord's power would increase by leaps and bounds, and it would be difficult to suppress him. Oh, red lunar beast, once I consume your inner core, not only will I be able to absorb the powerful energy in the inner core, but more importantly, I will also possess your talent. When that time comes, the demon lord raised his head and looked at the night sky. In the boundless night sky, the bright moon was very eye-catching. When that time comes, I will be able to absorb the essence of the moonlight directly. My power will improve tremendously, and I will become the king of this world. Even in the outer heaven, I will be able to occupy a spot. No one will be able to threaten me anymore." Hearing this, Tang Zhang's heartstrings trembled as he realized that the situation was far more complicated than he had imagined. He hurriedly asked, "Are you saying that after consuming the Crimson Moon Beast Niden, I can also possess its innate talent?" "Of course." The Demon Lord raised his head proudly and answered with disdain. Tang Zheng was enlightened. "No wonder you are trying so hard to get the Red Lunar Beast. This talent was much more important than the energy in the Red Lunar Beast's inner core. Once he had this talent, he would be able to continuously absorb the essence of the moonlight from the moon. The essence of the moonlight was much more powerful than spiritual qi. His cultivation would be much faster." Tang Zheng looked at the Red Lunar Beast with a complicated expression. It seemed to have noticed that Tang Zheng was looking at it, so it turned around. When their eyes met, the Red Lunar Beast shrunk its neck. It knew that the situation was not good. "Thank you for telling me all this. If it weren't for you, I am afraid that I wouldn't know about all this. Telling me all this before you die is the last bit of value you have," Tang Zheng said calmly. The Demon Lord was stunned for a moment. Then it laughed out loud as if it had heard the funniest joke in the world. It snorted. "Are you really scared out of your wits? How could you say something so stupid? About the Red Lunar Beast, it is useless for you to know, because you will not be able to see me absorb its inner core." After he finished speaking, he was ready to take action. However, he heard a few cracking sounds. Several cabin doors opened, and many people came out. They were finally awakened by this movement. They came out to see what was going on. When they saw that there was an evil black-clothed man on the yacht, they were scared and retreated. "Everyone, don't panic. I am here. He can't hurt you." Tang Zheng comforted them. "Who is he?" Du Qifeng asked. "A fish that escaped the net. I'll let him escape. Today, he won't be able to escape." Tang Zheng took a step forward and stood in front of the Demon Lord and the others. Xiao Xiaoling also hurriedly stood in front of everyone. He looked at the Demon Lord with vigilance. He had already judged that this person was extraordinary, so he raised his spirit. The Demon Lord coldly glanced at everyone and said, "Hee hee, there's so many people here. Wait until I get rid of you, then I'll get rid of them. Then, no one will know what happened tonight. It's a pity that you won't be able to see me soar into the sky and amaze the world. Don't dream about your spring and autumn." Tang Zheng stepped forward and took the initiative to attack. The War Soul sword slashed the air and directly attacked the Demon Lord. The Demon Lord snorted coldly and opened his folding fan. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A cold light flew out of the folding fan and shot straight at Tang Zheng. Ding dang. After a crisp sound, the War Soul sword resisted the attack of the cold light. Only a few puffs were heard. The cabin door and walls had many small holes, which were completely destroyed by the cold light. Chapter 1009. The battle between the two was very fierce. This narrow space was not enough for them to display their true fighting strength, so their figures flashed, and the two sides tacitly came to the deck. The sword chi and the cold light from the folding fan fell into the water, splashing a column of water into the sky. The Demon Lord's eyes were awe-inspiring as he asked, "Your cultivation has increased so much. How did you do it?" Compared to the beginning, Tang Zheng's strength had indeed increased a lot. The Demon Lord couldn't help but be surprised, but he still underestimated Tang Zheng's strength. Tang Zheng sneered and didn't answer, but the War Soul in his hand danced more and more airtight. The sword light intertwined together and attacked the Demon Lord from all directions. The Demon Lord retreated slightly and shouted, "Demon, I sold destruction." As soon as his voice fell, the Demon Lord's eyes turned as black as ink, deeper than the night sky, as if a person's soul would be sucked in at a glance. A trembling feeling arose from the depths of his soul, causing Tang Zheng to jump in fright. He hurriedly circulated his energy to defend against this strange attack. He had seen the power of this technique before, and the scene of flesh and blood flying everywhere after the explosion was still vivid in his mind. Suddenly, a crew member rushed out of the deck and happened to meet the demon lord's eyes. His soul trembled and exploded with a bang, turning into a rain of blood. The others were almost scared silly by this scene. They were dumbfounded and stared blankly at the rain of blood in the sky. Tang Zheng hurriedly shouted, "Go back, go back! Don't come out, don't look into his eyes." The others woke up from a dream and quickly retreated into the cabin like a receding tide. They shivered and their faces were pale, and they didn't dare to come out again. Xiao Xiaoling also felt cold all over. Only now did he understand how vulnerable his so-called strength was in front of these super experts. Suddenly, his resentment towards Tang Zheng dissipated a lot. He was looking forward to the result of the battle between the two, and who was more skilled. Lu Qingmei also came out of the house and came to the crowd. She comforted them softly. "Don't worry, Tang Zheng is here. The bad guys can't hurt us." The others looked at her deeply, and the fear and haze in their hearts dispersed a little. While the two of them were engaged in a fierce battle, Xiao Bai and the Red Lunar Beast were like spectators. They leisurely strolled to the deck to watch the battle. Xiao Bai muttered to himself, "Master strength has really increased by a lot. This demon lord is not to be underestimated. This kind of battle is more interesting." As it spoke, it patted the Red Lunar's head and asked, "Red Lunar, I didn't know that you had such an impressive background. Absorbing the essence of the moonlight is indeed a good thing." However, the two words Red Moon are too hard to pronounce. I want to give you a new name. Whoosh! The Red Moon Beast snorted as if it was protesting against Xiao Bai's decision. Xiao Bai knocked on the Red Moon Beast's head and pretended to be angry. "You dare to protest? Do you believe that I will roast you now?" The Scarlet Lunar Beast shuddered and did not dare to protest anymore. It was as docile as a kitten. This sentence became the most effective weapon to threaten the Red Lunar Beast. That's more like it. Xiao Bai was satisfied and started to think. As for the battle in the outside world, it did not seem to be affected by it at all. Suddenly, it cheered, "Wow, I got it. This name must be very good, just a little bit worse than my name." The Red Lunar Beast's eyes were filled with fear, as if it had foreseen something bad. "Little Yu, this name sounds good, right?" Xiao Bai's eyes shone brightly as it spoke. The Red Lunar Beast's eyes were filled with despair. It was trying its best to control its thoughts of resisting, but it definitely wanted to kill itself. Xiao Bai clapped its paws excitedly. "From now on, you will be called Little Yu. Remember my kindness of giving you a name. You must repay me in the future." Xiao Bai was very proud of itself, as if it had done something great. The Red Lunar Beast almost burst into tears. It was filled with grief and indignation. It looked like it was taking revenge, but how could it repay him? Tang Zheng also heard their conversation and wanted a laugh in his heart. Indeed, there was always one thing to conquer another. Even though the Scarlet Lunar Beast was extraordinary, it could only be obedient in the hands of Little White. It could not even cause a ripple. What was the origin of this Xiao Bai? How could it have such a demonic power? Tang Zheng was even more curious about this question. In fact, he had already asked it yesterday, but Xiao Bai's memory was limited. It could only remember what happened after it was born. As for the origin of its own race, it did not know anything at all. Tang Zheng could not help but feel disappointed, but also filled him with anticipation. The Red Lunar Beast was not simple, so one could only imagine how amazing Xiao Bai's true identity was. The power of the demonic soul extermination was very strong. Tang Zheng felt as if his soul was about to scatter, which made his heartstrings tremble. The battle soul sword was waving faster and faster. Suddenly, a ray of light flashed through his mind. The Tai Chi Yin-Yang sword art had magically appeared. This set of sword technique was usually impossible to remember and would only appear in this kind of life and death situation. So Tang Zheng was not surprised at all and was able to use this set of sword technique with ease. Swoosh! Swoosh! In an instant, the battle soul sword left his hand and flew towards the Demon Lord. The Demon Lord's expression changed. It seemed to have realized the power of this sword art. The folding fan in its hand opened up and expanded rapidly, completely blocking the battle soul sword. However, Pucci, with a tearing sound, the folding fan was split into two. The demon lord was stunned for a moment. When it saw the sword light coming towards it, it hurriedly dodged it. However, its eyes quickly locked onto Tang Zheng. It shifted its position and coincidentally looked into Tang Zheng's eyes. Boom! Tang Zheng felt as if his soul had been severely injured, as if it was being torn apart. A wave of pain and trembling that came from the depths of his soul arose spontaneously. He secretly cursed. This was the effect of the demon lord's demonic eye-soul extinguisher. Once it locked onto him, he was afraid that his fate would not be much different from the others. However, he did not give up. He hurriedly channeled his energy. However, this attack came from his soul. For a moment, he was unable to break free. Suddenly, a voice sounded in his mind. He felt his entire body relax. He suddenly realized that this was his own voice. However, it was chanting the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Usually, in order to suppress the Shura, he would often need to chant the Ksitigarbha Sutra. He did not expect that this voice would suddenly appear in his mind. The ancients created a phrase, lingering for 3 days, lingering for 3 days. The voice chanting the Ksitigarbha Sutra was not as simple as lingering for 3 days. It was deeply imprinted in his soul. When his soul was attacked, the Ksitigarbha Sutra would be triggered. He suddenly realized that the members of the world of spirits and souls were originally spirits. As the Dizong of Goguryu's most powerful technique, the Ksitigarbha Sutra was, of course, the best technique for cultivating the soul. It seemed reasonable that it could resist the demon lord's demonic eye-soul extinguisher attack. Tang Zheng was overjoyed. He originally thought that the Ksitigarbha Sutra could only be used to suppress the Shura. Now, it seemed that its effect was far greater than he thought. In fact, he was not wrong. The Ksitigarbha Sutra was a high-level technique for cultivating the soul. As he chanted it every day, the Ksitigarbha Sutra was gradually imprinted in his soul. Over time, his soul became stronger and stronger. Even when facing a soul-type attack, he could handle it with ease. The demon lord was very confident. He thought that this was a sure thing. He would definitely be able to get rid of Tang Zheng. However, he suddenly noticed that the corner of Tang Zheng's mouth curled up into a smile. His heart skipped a beat as he realized that something was wrong. An ominous premonition struck him. Before he could react, he found that there were 2 palms on his chest. Bang! Bang! As the 2 palms landed on his chest quickly caved in. Like a kite with a broken string, he fell into the sea, splashing water everywhere. Xiaobai was not surprised by this scene. He mumbled, "This demon lord is also an idiot. How dare he look down on my master? Now, he has suffered the consequences of his own actions." The Scarlet Moon beast rolled its eyes, as if to say that he was not as powerful as he said. Xiaobai's fiery golden eyes immediately noticed the look in the Scarlet Moon beast's eyes. His eyes flashed as he asked, "You don't agree?" The Scarlet Moon beast immediately denied, shaking its head like a rattle drum. "If you dare to disagree, I will roast you," Xiaobai threatened. The Scarlet Moon beast lowered its head, feeling wronged. Xiaobai suddenly pointed at the sea and shouted, "Master, the demon lord is not dead yet. Look at the sea." There was a mark on the sea, and it was moving quickly towards a distance. Under the moonlight, it was very obvious. "You want to run away? Didn't you want to kill me?" Tang Zheng sneered. He flew on his sword and chased after it. "Let's go and have a look." Little White patted the back of the Scarlet Lunar Beast. The Scarlet Lunar Beast roared and rushed out of the ship, landing on the surface of the water. However, it did not sink. Instead, it stepped on the water and quickly chased after Little White. The others rushed out in fear, looking at the backs of the few from afar. The earth-shattering battle just now had completely changed their worldview, letting them experience another world outside of this one. They looked at each other, unable to calm down. Lu Qingmei's eyes lit up. She clenched her fists and locked on to the handsome figure in the air. Her beautiful eyes were filled with splendor. The two rushed towards the horizon, one after the other. The dark clouds in the sky moved to the top of their heads, and a storm was coming. Crack! A bolt of lightning tore through the dark clouds, and thunder rumbled. Heavy rain poured down, splashing onto the ground. Violent winds blew, setting off stormy waves. The originally calm sea surface was suddenly filled with wind and rain, turning into a scene of doomsday. Tang Jing's pupils shrank. He drew his bow and said, "Do you want to hide under the water for the rest of your life? Come out." Swoosh! The shooting sun arrow left the bow and shot into the sea. Boom! A huge sound was heard, and huge waves appeared. A human figure broke out of the water and rushed into the sky, bringing with him a stream of blood. His body was covered in blood. Obviously, he had been injured by the shooting sun arrow. He floated in the air, staring at Tang Jing from afar. He asked in disbelief, "How can you be so powerful?" Tang Jing laughed. "There's no need to tell you. Tell me about the sky beyond sky, and I will let you die a quick death." Wishful thinking. The demon lord roared, and a black fog appeared on his body. In an instant, he merged with the darkness. It was very strange. "A little bastard from Kingsman wants to force me, the demon lord, to commit a crime? Impossible." Chapter 10:10. In the demon Honorable's mind, Tang Jing had once performed the heavenly fairy sword technique. Therefore, he had always considered Tang Jing as someone from Kingsman. As for Kingsman, he did not take them seriously. This was because this sect was considered strong in the past. However, ever since they were banished to the outer sky, they had gradually declined. Now, they were reduced to a third-rate sect. For a powerful sect like the demon race, they naturally did not take such a third-rate sect seriously. How ignorant! You still think that I'm from Kingsman. Tang Jing snorted in disdain. The shooting sun arrow was placed on the heaven-shocking bow, and in that moment, the arrowhead flickered with light, like a ray of starlight shining brightly in the night sky. "Break!" Tang Jing roared. The shooting sun arrow pierced through the sky. The black fog behind the demon Honorable surged and turned into a wall, blocking the shooting sun arrow's path. Boom! The shooting sun arrow hit the black fog. The black fog shattered, and the shooting sun arrow fell into the sea. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Another 3 arrows were shot consecutively. They formed the shape of a triangle and shot towards the demon Honorable in an orderly manner. The demon Honorable was shocked and screamed. However, he slapped his own chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. This scene looked like self-mutilation. However, Tang Jing did not think so. The demon Honorable was forced into a corner and was about to give his all. Thus, he hurriedly made preparations for everything. As expected, the blood that he spat out floated in mid-air. The demon Honorable's finger was stained with the blood. He quickly dropped it in mid-air. A pungent smell of blood rushed into the sky. Due to the storm, the smell of blood did not weaken. Instead, it became stronger. The demon Honorable had a ferocious expression on his face. He shouted fiercely, "Souls stealing in the blood sea." As soon as he finished speaking, the sky turned red. Even the rain that fell from the dark clouds turned red like fresh blood. The rainwater fell into the sea and bubbled as if it was boiling. In an instant, the area below turned into a sea of blood. Fish floated on the surface of the sea with their bellies up, losing their lives. This area seemed to have turned into a sea of death, causing people to be intimidated. Bai and the red lunar beast were floating in the sea, but they were not affected. Bai was holding 2 shooting sun arrows in its claws. It had picked them up when they fell into the sea. Raising his head to look at the scene, Bai curled his lips. This demon lord is really not easy to deal with. You, if Master is not strong enough later, you can't be lazy. You have to help Master. Do you hear me? This time, the red lunar beast agreed without hesitation. Bai happily praised, "Very good. Keep it up. Keep it up." 3 shooting sun arrows arrived in front of the demon venerable. The rain that fell from the sky suddenly stopped and gradually gathered in front of the demon lord. The seawater below also soared into the sky. The two blood-like streams of water merged and quickly intertwined into a giant hand, grabbing the three shooting sun arrows. Boom! Boom! After three explosions, the shooting sun arrows stopped and fell into the sea. Bai leaped up and snatched the shooting sun arrows back. As for the giant blood-red hand, it also fell apart. However, before Tang Zheng could be happy, the blood-red hand quickly gathered and protected the demon lord, blocking all possible attacks. Tang Zheng had a strange look in his eyes. This was a move that the demon lord had not used last time. Last time, he had mainly used the illusory god-devil realm and the demonic eye-soul extermination. Now that these two moves were useless against Tang Zheng, the demon lord had no choice but to change his attack pattern. Obviously, this move was not simple. Tang Zheng did not dare to be careless. What he didn't know was that the demon sovereign had to pay a huge price to use this move. The demon sovereign had to sacrifice his own life to use this move. Therefore, under normal circumstances, he would never use such a risky move. But now, he had no choice but to do so. Otherwise, it would be even more difficult for him to escape. Now, he still had a chance to live. Lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled in the sky. Even the lightning seemed to have been dyed red. Everything was strange. This time, Tang Zheng did not hold back. He shot out the remaining 4 shooting sun arrows. The 4 arrows were shot together with unparalleled power. Kill! The demon lord roared. His body was covered in a bloody light and could not be seen clearly. The pair of blood-red hands grew bigger and bigger. In the end, they almost occupied half of the sky and fell from the sky. Whoosh! The blood-red hand grabbed one of the shooting sun arrows and threw it down disdainfully. Following the same pattern, the remaining 3 shooting sun arrows were blocked one by one. A red light flashed, and the blood-red hand exploded into pieces. Lines of blood also appeared on the demon lord's body. His body seemed to be dismembered. The blood merged with the blood around his body and fluctuated violently. Immediately, a blood-red hand appeared and grabbed at Tang Zheng. An invisible force seemed to have grabbed Tang Zheng's soul. Tang Zheng felt his body tighten. It was as if his soul was about to leave his body. He hurriedly chanted the Ksitigarbha Sutra. His soul immediately calmed down, and that feeling disappeared. The demon lord waited for a long time and found that the blood-red hand was empty. It did not snatch away Tang Zheng's soul. This was too inconceivable. This was because even an early soul formation stage cultivator would find it extremely difficult to dodge this attack. They would not be able to dodge it as easily as Tang Zheng. The demon lord was puzzled. However, he already knew that something was wrong. This was because his body had reached a limit. If he continued to force himself, his blood would dry up, and he would die even if Tang Zheng did not attack him. His blood was like a flood that broke through a dam. It continued to flow out from the various wounds on his body, completely drenching his clothes and mixing with the rain and seawater outside. A hint of despair flashed through his heart, but he instantly reminded himself that he could not be so pessimistic. After all, the outcome had not been decided yet. Your soul attack is useless against me. Don't waste your energy. Tang Zheng roared. What kind of spell have you cultivated? How can you defend against my soul attack? The demon lord was unwilling to give up. He asked in a hoarse voice. Soul attacks had always been one of his strengths. Many people who were on the same level as him had died at his hands because of his soul attacks. This was also what he was most proud of. However, he did not expect that this series of attacks would be useless against Tang Zheng. The Ksitigarbha Sutra. Have you heard of it? Tang Zheng asked with a smile. The Ksitigarbha Sutra? The demon lord was confused. It was obvious that he had never heard of this spell. Bai, bring back my sun's shooting arrows. Tang Zheng had already seen Bai on the surface of the sea. Hence, he could shoot arrows without fear. He did not have to worry about losing the sun-shooting arrows in the sea. Whiz! Bai carried the sun-shooting arrows and soared into the sky from the scarlet lunar beast. His 4 hooves were on fire as he stepped on the flames. He was not afraid of the wind and rain at all as he arrived beside Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng took the 9 sun-shooting arrows. Suddenly, his expression changed drastically. He looked at the sun-shooting arrows in his hand in shock. Although there were 9 sun-shooting arrows, when combined together, it gave him the feeling that they were one. Could it be that not only can these 9 sun-shooting arrows be separated, they can also be combined into one? With a thought, he immediately activated his innate chi and channeled it into the sun-shooting arrows. However, there was no change. There's no reaction. Could it be that I guessed wrongly? He was confused, but he immediately denied this thought. His intuition should not be wrong, but there must be something wrong somewhere. Suddenly, an idea flashed through his mind, and he suddenly remembered something. All of his magic treasures had been recognized by blood, but only the heaven-shocking bow and the sun-shooting arrows did not have this procedure. Because he had done this before, but it was useless. He did not understand the reason, so he did not investigate further. Now that the 9 sun-shooting arrows were gathered, he gradually had a thought. Could it be that it was because he did not gather all of the sun-shooting arrows back then? It was equivalent to this magic treasure not being a whole, so it could not be recognized by blood. Then wouldn't it be fine now? With a thought, a drop of blood essence appeared from the tip of his finger and dripped onto the shooting sun arrow. He chanted the incantation for blood recognition, and immediately, the shooting sun arrow released a blood-red light. This light not only enveloped all the arrows, it also enveloped the heaven-shocking bow, and a mysterious power rippled out. "What are you doing?" the demon Venerable asked in shock. Tang Zheng was excited, because his guess had finally been confirmed. In the past, he could not drip his blood to recognize his master because the sun-shooting arrows were not complete. Now that he had gathered a set of magic treasure, he could easily drip his blood to recognize his master. If not for the subtle feeling of having 9 sun-shooting arrows in his hands, he would not have thought of this. The lights suddenly converged, and the sun-shooting arrows and heaven-shocking bow returned to their original state. However, in Tang Zheng's eyes, he still felt that there was something different. "Master!" A voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Tang Zheng was pleasantly surprised and asked, "You are an artifact spirit?" The heaven-shocking bow and the sun-shooting arrows were sacred artifacts, so they naturally had artifact spirits, so Tang Zheng was able to guess it immediately. "Yes, master." Sure enough, the artifact spirit replied respectfully. "Can these 9 sun-shooting arrows be fused into one?" Tang Zheng asked the question in his heart. "Of course." With that said, the sun-shooting arrow flashed, and the 9 arrows merged into one, turning into one sun-shooting arrow. This sun-shooting arrow did not seem to have anything special about it, but Tang Zheng knew that its power was definitely not the same as before. He was eager to give it a try, and raised his head to look at the Lord. The demon Venerable's heart skipped a beat. He had a bad premonition, and shouted, "What are you doing?" He had clearly seen the changes in the sun-shooting arrows, and naturally understood that this was not a good thing for him. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth raised, and he said, "Just now, you tried the power of each arrow. Now I'll let you have a taste of the power of the 9 arrows." Done. The sun-shooting arrow was placed on the heaven-shocking bow. The bowstring was pulled into the shape of a full moon, aimed at the demon Venerable, and released his fingers. Buzz! The bowstring released a heart-shaking sound, and the rain seemed to have frozen at this moment. The sun-shooting arrow pierced through the raindrops, tore through the curtain of water formed by the interweaving rain, and shot towards the demon Venerable. Chapter 10:11. When the demon Venerable saw the shooting sun arrow flying towards him, he staggered backwards and tried to fight back. The blood in the air interweaved to form a water screen. However, with a tearing sound, the shooting sun arrow mercilessly tore a hole in the water screen. The shooting sun arrow accurately pierced through the demon Venerable's chest. Everything froze. The demon marshal's body suddenly stiffened and maintained a strange posture. His eyes were filled with disbelief as his life force quickly disappeared. Ah! A heart-wrenching scream came from the depths of his throat. It was abnormally ear-piercing. Suddenly, the scream stopped abruptly. A large amount of blood spurted out from the gaps in his body like a fountain. Boom! Under the great lord's desperate gaze, a loud explosion occurred. The demon marshal's body turned into a rain of blood that drifted with the wind and fell into the sea. Tang Zheng was in a daze for a moment and was amazed. The power of 9 arrows combined into one was unimaginable. Furthermore, when the shooting sun arrow flew out, his connection with the shooting sun arrow was still very close. The shooting sun arrow floated in midair and did not fall into the sea like before. "Come back," Tang Zheng called out, and the shooting sun arrow flew back into his hand with a so sound. He could freely control the shooting sun arrow as if he was controlling the war soul sword. This way, he did not have to worry about losing the shooting sun arrow. This was an unexpected surprise of the blood recognition. I looked at this scene lazily and curled his lips. What demon marshal? It's just SOSO. How can it be Master's opponent? Tang Zheng's entire body relaxed as he laughed involuntarily and said, "Are you trying to flatter me?" Bai opened his mouth as if he was laughing. "Let's go down. Don't let the scarlet lunar beast escape." "How dare it? Roast it," Bai said fiercely. Tang Zheng laughed and looked at the rain that was gradually returning to normal. Although it was a storm in front of him, the wind and rain could not affect him at all. On the sea, the scarlet lunar beast did not run away. It only looked up at the scene in the sky. When it saw the demon marshal explode and die, its eyes flashed with shock. Seeing Tang Zheng and by descending from the sky, it quickly lowered its head and looked docile. Although it was arrogant by nature, after Bai's punishment, it understood who was stronger and who was weaker. Therefore, it instinctively chose to give in. Tang Zheng looked at the red lunar beast with satisfaction. It did not choose to run away, which was a wise decision. He believed that since Bai was so confident, it must have absolute confidence. Even if it ran away, there must be a way to get it back. If it really ran away, then Tang Zheng would definitely not be so courteous to it. Since the red lunar beast was so useful that even the demon lord wanted to snatch its inner core if it was really rebellious, then Tang Zheng would definitely not keep a ticking time bomb by his side. He might even snatch its inner core. However, since it was so obedient and it was related to the red moon beast and the crystal, he would not touch it for the time being. Although he also urgently needed to increase his power, he was not as crazy as the demon sovereign. "Let's go back to the yacht. The storm is going to hit the yacht soon." Tang Zheng rode on his sword while Bai rode on the back of the red lunar beast. It seemed to be getting used to being a mount as it swam back to the yacht without saying a word. On the yacht, everyone was anxiously waiting. As they were too far away and there were dark clouds, they could not see clearly what was happening in the middle of the night. Seeing that Tang Zheng had returned, they immediately went up to him and asked about the outcome. "The threat has been eliminated." "Don't worry," Tang Zheng said. "Who is that person? What red lunar beast? What demon marshal?" Someone asked curiously. Tang Zheng smiled and said, "There's something that I have to tell you. This world is not as simple as you think it is. There are many unknown dangers. Therefore, it's best to forget what you've seen. Don't tell anyone about it, or else it won't do you any good." This sentence was a warning, but it also carried a threatening nature. Everyone heard it, and immediately their faces became deathly pale. Tang Zheng was not being cruel. He was doing it for their own good. If they were to spread the news, they would be the ones who would be hurt in the end. Of course, he might be in some trouble, but he already had enough troubles. He did not care about one more. Du Qifeng's heart skipped a beat, and his face became serious. He warned everyone sternly. "Did you hear that? Young Master Tang is doing it for everyone's good. You must remember that. Otherwise, you'll be the ones who suffer in the end. If I hear anyone spreading rumors, I won't let them go." Everyone kept quiet out of fear and kept nodding their heads. What they had seen and heard along the way had completely shocked them. Although they were curious, no one would risk their lives to spread rumors. Tang Zheng nodded his head in satisfaction. This matter was finally over. Du Chifeng immediately asked someone to clean up the blood on the ground and the dead colleague. This time, they had lost 2 people, and it was a shadow in everyone's heart. Whoosh! The wind blew, and the storm finally swept over. The yacht shook with the breaking waves. The rainstorm hit the yacht and made a crackling sound. Tang Zheng's face sank. His right foot gently stamped on the deck. With a bang, the big ship sank down as if it had been hit by a huge force. It shook violently and stopped immediately. The yacht seemed to have taken root in the sea. No matter how turbulent the waves were, they could not do anything to the yacht. Early in the morning, the storm finally stopped. The wind and rain washed away the killing and blood of last night. The sun shone and the sea breeze blew, bringing a fresh smell. For what happened last night, everyone chose to keep their mouths shut. No one mentioned it or asked Tang Zheng about it. Everyone was eager to return to the land. At noon, the yacht finally docked. Several luxury cars had been waiting at the dock for a long time. Tang Zheng, Lu Qingmei, Du Qifeng, Wang Guanchuan, and Xiao Xiaolin got in a car. Bai and the Red Moon Beast naturally followed. The Red Moon Beast was as big as a leopard. It was majestic and looked at the colorful world in amazement. It had been on the bottom of the sea since it was born. It had never left the sea. In the face of this colorful world, there was some confusion in its eyes. It was even more difficult to hide its excitement. It sniffed left and right. Bai scornfully curled his lips and said, "You are really ignorant." The Red Moon Beast rolled its eyes and did not dare to refute. Fortunately, there were too many local tyrants who raised some strange pets. So even if the Red Moon Beast was a bit strange, it did not cause too much reaction from strangers. At most, they just looked at it a few more times. This made Tang Zheng feel relieved. If the Red Moon Beast was too eye-catching, he would definitely not hesitate to take it in his Sumeru world. The car came to a high-end hotel. Delicious food was waiting for them. This was Du Qifeng's arrangement. Tang Zheng did not object. At the dining table, Du Qifeng was very good at livening up the atmosphere. The gloominess on the sea was swept away. Both the guests and the host enjoyed themselves. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, Tang Zheng did not beat around the bush. He said directly, "Director Du, it's fate that we met this time. If there's anything that you need help with, just tell me. If there's anything that I can help with, I'll do my best." Since Du Qifeng was so attentive, he must have a request. Du Qifeng looked at Tang Zheng gratefully. If Tang Zheng did not take the initiative to mention it, he would not have dared to mention it after so many things had happened. At that moment, he was relieved. "Thank you for thinking so highly of me, young Master Tang. Then, I won't be long-winded. I heard a rumor that there was a magical pill called the Life-Extending Pill in the capital last year. It was made by young Master Tang. May I know if young Master Tang still has such a magical pill?" Life-extending pill? Tang Zheng frowned. Ever since the world of spirits and souls rebounded, he had almost given up the idea of using the life-extending pill. He did not expect Du Qifeng to mention it. Seeing Tang Zheng's reaction, Du Qifeng's heart sank. He said bitterly, "If it's inconvenient for young Master Tang, then forget it." Alas! Tang Zheng took a deep look at Du Qifeng and asked, "What's the matter with you first?" A touch of joy flashed through Du Qifeng's eyes. He seemed to see a glimmer of hope again. He said, "My wife has a strange disease. The doctors don't have much time left. I was desperate, but I didn't expect that there would be a way to meet young Master Tang. So, I asked young Master Tang for the life-extending pill to save my wife's life." Lu Qingmei's heart softened. She said, "First, I didn't expect Director Du to be so affectionate. Although your wife is sick, she must be very happy. Alas, she suffered too much and suffered too much when she was with me. If I just watch her leave like this, I'm really not a man." Du Qifeng shook his head and sighed. As a woman, Lu Qingmei was very easily moved by this kind of thing. She held Tang Zheng's hand and said, "If you have a way, please help Director Du." "Thank you, Sister Lu." Du Qifeng was very grateful. He knew very well how important Lu Qingmei was. With her words, Tang Zheng would definitely not sit by and do nothing. Sure enough, Tang Zheng nodded. Director Du is a man who values affectionate and righteousness. I admire you very much. I will help you, but I don't have the life-extending pill. The life-extending pill could extend one's life. It was related to the ghost realm, so he didn't want to use it easily. There were many ways to save people. It was not necessary to use the life-extending pill. Hearing that there was no life-extending pill, a touch of despair flashed through Du Qifeng's eyes. Seeing this, Tang Zheng hurriedly said, Director Du, don't worry. Listen to me. Although I don't have a life-extending pill, it's not difficult to cure diseases and save people. I'll recommend a person to you. He is the divine hand of Xinglin. I think he can help your wife. Who is it? The King of Medicine. The King of Medicine? Isn't his whereabouts uncertain? Where can I find him? Hearing this name, Du Qifeng's eyes lit up. He had thought of looking for the King of Medicine, but this person was elusive. With his level, he couldn't find the King of Medicine. Tang Zheng smiled faintly. Of course, he knew where the King of Medicine was. He was studying medicine in Tang Zheng's pharmaceutical company. This old man was obsessed with medicine. He was obsessed with the life-extending pill provided by Tang Zheng. He wouldn't give up until he thoroughly studied it. I'll ask him to contact you. If it still doesn't work, I'll think of another way. Tang Zheng promised. Chapter 10-12. After dinner, a group of people parted ways. Tang Zheng, Lu Qingmei, and Xiao Xiaoling returned to the capital, and the others followed Du Qifeng and left. Along the way, Xiao Xiaoling drove, but he was very silent. Tang Zheng and Lu Qingmei sat in the back seat, while the Red Moon Beast and Xiao Bai sat in the front seat. The Red Moon Beast had retracted its head, and it no longer looked at the Grandview Garden like Granny Lu. It had a new understanding of the world and seemed to be lost in thought. Little White lazily laid on its body, using it as a cushion. The sunlight shone in from the window and shone on its snow-white fur, making it look like the most precious satin. As for the red fur on its forehead, it looked like it was about to burn. Tang Zheng glanced at Xiao Xiaoling, who was driving, and said, After returning to the capital, I will give you a task. You go and find Song Yu and the other people of the Sword Pavilion. Now you are a master warrior. It's no problem to deal with Song Yu, right? Xiao Xiaoling pondered for a moment and replied without turning his head, Yes. Tang Zheng didn't expect Xiao Xiaoling to be loyal. As long as he didn't violate his promise, he was still very confident about this. This task was also equivalent to a test. If he really failed, he would stand aside forever in the future. At present, Tang Zheng was not short of manpower. A master warrior didn't have much value to him. The car stopped at the door of the house. Hearing the sound, the others came out. Fang Shishir saw Xiao Xiaoling and couldn't help exclaiming, Why are you here? The original trip to Dianan left a deep impression on her, so she still remembered Xiao Xiaoling. Xiao Xiaoling narrowed his eyes and recognized Fang Shishir. He looked at Lu Qingmei thoughtfully, but he didn't say anything. You go. Tang Zheng waved his hand. Xiao Xiaoling didn't say a word, turned around and left. Isn't he a killer? Why is he with you? Fang Shishir frowned and asked. I've taken him under my command. I see. Fang Shishir suddenly understood and looked at Lu Qingmei thoughtfully, trying to guess what had happened between the two. Although Lu Qingmei was shy, she still greeted everyone gracefully. When they entered the room, the people in the room began to ask questions. Tang Zheng was not in a hurry to answer. Instead, he asked, Where's Grandpa? Why don't I see him? Grandpa is living next door. Uncle and Auntie are also living with him. Fang Shishir said. It turned out that after the old man came to the capital, he felt that it was a novelty at first, but later on, he found a room full of girls swaying in front of him, dazzling him. The old man liked peace and quiet. In the end, he suggested that they move out. How could Fang Shishir and the others agree? However, they couldn't resist the old man's insistence. In the end, they decided to move out on their own, but the old man vetoed it. They had no choice but to buy the villa next door for the old man to live in. When Wu Junshan and Lan Yu saw this, they were worried that the old man would be lonely, so they took the initiative to move in together. It's all our fault. We're too noisy every day and disturb Grandpa. Fang Sure said guiltily. It's not your fault. I'm going to see Grandpa. I'll be back in a while. Tang Zheng came next door and found the three of them sitting under the shade of a tree in the backyard drinking tea. Wu Dang acted as a waiter serving tea. When she saw Tang Zheng, her eyes were filled with surprise. You came back so quickly. Why didn't you call in advance? Wu Dang intimately ran over. Tang Zheng hugged her slender waist. Seeing the other three turn their heads, he said without blushing, Grandpa, I'm back. Tang Dahai happily stood up and amiably looked at the pair and said, It's good that you're back. Everyone is talking about you. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu also looked at him with surprise. Especially Lan Yu. Her eyes were extremely soft and emitted a motherly radiance. Tang Zheng nodded to the two of them and said, Thank you for accompanying Grandpa. Lan Yu rebuked, We're all family. There's no need to say thank you. The old man is a very interesting person. Listening to him talk about your childhood is very interesting. Hee, that's because you don't mind this old man's nagging. Tang Dahai said with a gratified smile. Tang Zheng looked deeply at Wu Junshan and Lan Yu. Regardless of whether their words were true or false, their actions of accompanying the old man made him very grateful. There shouldn't be any danger this time, right? Tang Dahai asked. There's no danger. I just went out for a stroll, reading 10,000 books, walking 10,000 miles. Isn't this what the ancients said? Going out for a walk is always right. All right, you don't have to accompany this old man. There must be someone waiting for you. Hurry up and go. Tang Dahai waved his hand and said. Tang Zheng supported the old man and said, Grandpa is joking. Or would there be someone waiting? Tang Dahai glared at him. Don't think that I can't see with my old eyes. Hurry up and go. I'll drink tea with the two of them and chat. All right, then I'll go over first. I'll call you when it's time to eat. Tang Zheng nodded towards Wu Junshan and Lan Yu, then turned and left. Wu hurriedly said, Grandfather, Master, Mistress, I'll go over first. Lan Yu laughed involuntarily. Go. A grown girl can't be kept. Wu's cheeks were slightly red, but she still held on to Tang Zheng's arm and happily walked out. Tang Dahai looked deeply at Wu Junshan and Lan Yu and said meaningfully, Don't worry, little Zheng is a reasonable child. He will definitely understand your good intentions. Just give him some time and he will figure it all out. Tang Dahai was very clear about the thoughts of the two. In the past, he was worried that his grandson would be snatched away, but now he understood that this worry was unnecessary. No matter who it was impossible for them to snatch Tang Zheng away from him. Therefore, from the bottom of his heart, he hoped that Tang Zheng would be able to reconcile with his parents. He was willing to be the bridge between them. Lan Yu emotionally said, Thank you, old master, for your understanding. We will definitely work even harder to obtain his forgiveness. We are willing to wait. Wu Junshan also firmly nodded his head. When Tang Zheng returned home, he was surrounded by a group of beauties, chattering nonstop. On the other hand, the Empyrean fairy was very quiet. She looked at the Scarlet Moon beast in the eyes and fell into deep thought. With the Empyrean fairy's eyes, she could naturally see that the Scarlet Moon beast was not an ordinary creature. Therefore, she was very curious as to why Tang Zheng went out and brought back such a fellow. When Xiaobai returned home, he was caught by Nana. Little girls had no resistance towards this kind of cute thing. Xiaobai wanted to break free, but was unable to escape. The Scarlet Moon beast rejoiced in his misfortune, as if it was saying that there was finally someone who could help it vent its anger. Nana, quickly let go of me. I can't breathe. Xiaobai finally could not help but scream. This voice immediately silenced the house. Everyone's gaze turned to Xiaobai, especially Nana. Like a frightened rabbit, she threw Xiaobai outside and turned around to jump into Tang Zheng's arms. She cried out in fear, It's talking. Tang Zheng laughed. Didn't you see Little Black on the island? Doesn't it know how to talk too? Little Black was the thundercloud beast. Nana raised her head as if she had been enlightened. She tilted her head and said, Yes, Little Black can talk too. All the animals in our house can talk. It's not scary at all. After she finished speaking, she turned around and rushed toward Xiaobai. Xiaobai was about to run away, but Nana quickly caught it. Her pair of small hands kept rubbing on its body as she shouted excitedly, "Xiaobai, say something again. Say that you like Nana." Xiaobai rolled its eyes as if it was saying that it was childish. Nana did not let it go. She pulled its mouth and urged, "Xiaobai, say it now." Looking at Xiaobai's hopeless look, Tang Zheng could not help but laugh even louder. Nana seemed to be showing signs of turning into a violent loli. Even the majestic Xiaobai could not resist her. Of course, it was not that Xiaobai was weaker than her. It knew that Nana was one of them, so it did not argue with her. Seeing this, the red lunar beast gloated even more. Its eyes were almost overflowing with joy. Xiaobai looked around and immediately saw its eyes. The red lunar beast shrunk its neck as if it was a mouse that saw a cat. It quickly hid to the side. Seeing this, the rest of the people could not help but laugh. With these two fellows in the house, it seemed to be a lot more fun. The Empyrean fairy looked at the red lunar beast and then looked at Xiaobai. She asked, "You've gained a lot this time. What's its background? Why can't I tell?" Seeing that she was pointing at the red lunar beast, Tang Zheng told her the truth. Its name is the red lunar beast. It's a creature from the Outland. That's why you haven't seen it before. Back then, when he brought the crystal back, he did not show it to the Empyrean fairy. Naturally, she did not know about the red lunar beast. However, Feng Shishir had seen it before. That was why she was shocked when she saw the red lunar beast. However, the crystal was very important, so she did not mention it in front of the others, and had never seen the crystal before. Naturally, she did not know about the red lunar beast that was sealed in it. Of course, she did not have much of a reaction. "It's from the Outland?" The Empyrean fairy was shocked. She stared at the red lunar beast with a sharp gaze. The scarlet lunar beast quickly retreated. It felt threatened by the gaze of that person. "Yes, that's why it's an important way for us to understand the Outland." Tang Zheng nodded. The Empyrean fairy was also very curious about the Outland. She walked towards the red lunar beast step by step. The red lunar beast roared. Its four hooves moved as if it was flying. It leaped into the air and scurried away. However, the Empyrean fairy was faster. She stretched out her hand and grabbed the red lunar beast's tail. No matter how hard it struggled, it could not break free. The Empyrean fairy grabbed the red lunar beast's neck. She narrowed her eyes slightly, as if she was trying to see through it. Roar! The red lunar beast kept roaring, as if it was protesting. However, its strength was not as strong as the Empyrean fairy. Everything it did was in vain. "Don't hurt little Yu. Xiaobai finally broke free from Nana. He rushed onto the red lunar beast and rode on its back. He shook his head at the Empyrean fairy and said, "Little Yu is my trophy." Little Yu? Everyone looked at the red lunar beast strangely. The name did not match its ferocious appearance at all. It made them want to laugh. Chapter 10:13. Because of Bai and the red lunar beast, the atmosphere was a little funny. Especially when they heard the name Yu, everyone was laughing. The red lunar beast wanted to dig a hole and hide in it. Tang Zheng glanced at it. Since the red lunar beast was related to the crystal, it was not appropriate for it to appear in front of her. Hence, he signaled the Empyrean fairy with his eyes. The Empyrean fairy understood what he meant. She swallowed the question that she wanted to ask and looked at him meaningfully. The Empyrean fairy let go of her hand, and the red lunar beast ran away. Bai hopped on its back and patted its head. Then, they quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. Tang Zheng went to the backyard, and the others left. Only the Empyrean fairy followed him. She asked softly, "You didn't finish talking just now. What happened? Do you still remember that Xianyin sealed herself?" Tang Zheng asked. The Empyrean fairy nodded quietly. "Actually, I've seen such a seal before." Tang Zheng told her about his discovery in the Swedish palace. The Empyrean fairy was enlightened. She subconsciously turned her head and looked into the house. "So, you're trying to avoid Anne. You're afraid that she'll know that you stole the crystal from her house." Tang Zheng shrugged and said, "The crystal is very important, especially the red lunar beast. Of course, I have to be careful. This time, we saw the red lunar beast at the bottom of the sea, and there was even a skeleton of the red lunar beast. There must be something that happened in the sea. If we can figure out, we might be able to solve the mystery of outer sky. The red lunar beast can't talk. What can we do? Unless we wake the red lunar beast in the crystal. The Empyrean fairy had an idea and said, yes. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. The red lunar beast in the crystal is not dead. I wonder what will happen if we let the two red lunar beasts meet. That's a good idea. It's worth a try. The Empyrean fairy agreed. Then there's no time to lose. I will bring the red lunar beast to the island tomorrow and meet with the other red lunar beast. I'll go with you. Tang Zheng looked at her deeply and nodded in agreement. Didn't you take many treasure chests in the sea? Are there any clues? The Empyrean fairy asked. Tang Zheng shook his head. I've already checked with my divine sense. These treasure chests don't contain any skeletons. They're all filled with jewels. The skeleton in the previous treasure chest was probably just a coincidence. The Empyrean fairy was slightly disappointed. It was the same for Tang Zheng. When he first heard about the red lunar beast from the demon lord, he had a thought. Is the inner core left behind by the skeleton still there? He specifically asked Wang Guanxuan and found out that there were no inner cores in the treasure chest that they fished up. The inner core was probably the same as the corpse. It had already rotted and fused into the sea. He then remembered the unusual great white shark. Perhaps the great white shark had absorbed the energy released by the red lunar beast after it rotted, causing it to mutate and increase its strength by a lot. I'm afraid no one knew that the corpse of the red lunar beast had such a great use back then. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been buried at the bottom of the sea and wasted. Tang Zheng sighed inwardly. That night, after everyone had dinner together, Tang Zheng returned to his room. Just as he laid on the bed, the voices of the heaven-shocking bow and the sun-shooting arrow artifact spirit sounded in his mind. Master, there's something I need to tell you. What's the matter? Tang Zheng asked in surprise. After I woke up, I found a set of archery techniques. I wonder if Master would like to know. Archery? Yes, Hoi's archery. This archery technique has always been sealed in my body, and I only discovered it not long ago. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up, and he immediately sat up from the bed. The heaven-shocking bow and the sun-shooting arrow were the weapons used by the ancient martial empress Yi to shoot down the sun. He never thought that there would actually be a set of Hoi's sword technique sealed within. Yi was a martial king, and if he could even shoot down the sun, then this set of Hoi's archery was naturally not ordinary. Thus, Tang Zheng could not wait. What kind of archery technique is it? Quickly tell me. Master will naturally understand once he sees it. With that said, a thought flashed through Tang Zheng's mind, and there was one more thing. Hoi's archery. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up and carefully browsed through this set of Hoi's archery. This was created by Hoi himself and was a set of archery martial arts mental cultivation method. However, without a doubt, when paired with Hoi's archery, it would definitely be able to unleash the power of the sun-shooting arrow and the heaven-shocking bow. Martial arts? If that's the case, wouldn't I be unable to cultivate? Tang Zheng turned pale. He was a cultivator. How could he cultivate martial arts? This was a matter of common sense. He shook his head, suppressing the disappointment in his heart. Back then, just what kind of person was Yi to be able to create this set of Hoi's archery technique? Although I can't cultivate it, if I meet a fated person, I will pass it down, and it can be considered as not letting Yi's archery technique disappear from the world. Master, is this set of archery useful? The artifact spirit asked. Tang Zheng smiled faintly and comforted. Thank you, it's useful. After resting for the night, Yi Dingdang did not climb up his window again. This was because she had been called back by Feng Xinyang after dinner last night. She had stayed here for almost the entire summer vacation, and as school was nearing, Feng Xinyang finally could not help but want to be alone with her daughter for a period of time. No one else had the guts as big as Yi Dingdang, so he was able to have a peaceful sleep. Early in the morning, Anne's scream rang out. Tang Zheng got up like a carp and rushed out, thinking that something had happened, but he saw Anne in front of the fish tank crying out in grief. My fish! Where are my fish? Where did they go? Last night, before I went to sleep, they were clearly in the fish tank, and I even fed them. How could they disappear? The few precious ornamental fish in the fish tank were specially flown in by and from her own country. After all, she was a princess, and the aristocratic style in her bones would be revealed no matter where she was. Some time ago, she felt that the huge living room was too empty and monotonous, so she became a designer herself and redecorated it, adding a lot of ornaments, and that huge fish tank and the ornamental fish in it were one of them. But she did not expect that the fish would disappear early in the morning. How could she not be angry? Tang Zheng thought that something big had happened, but it turned out that it was just a few fish, and he could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. When and saw him, she pounced on him like a butterfly, took his arm, and said with grievance, "Tang Zheng, you must investigate for me, find my fish, and punish the murderer severely." Looking at her towering chest rubbing against his arm, Tang Zheng's heart was restless, but when he saw the strange gazes of the others, he quickly suppressed this thought and said righteously, "This is our home. We can ask the disciples of the witch clan who are guarding outside to see if anyone has barged in. I've already asked. No one broke in at all. Moreover, if someone really came, with so many masters, how could they not find him?" Tang Zheng secretly nodded his head. What Annie said was right. If someone really barged in, even he and the mysterious Lady of the Nine Heavens would not be able to discover them. Then it could only mean that the other party's cultivation was ridiculously high, and there should not be such an expert in this world. Moreover, even if there was an enemy, it would not be just for a few fish. There must be something fishy going on. Tang Zheng's face turned grave, and he began to ponder. He looked left and right, then asked, "Is there anything else that's missing?" "No." The rest shook their heads. Tang Zheng's eyebrows furrowed even deeper. This was strange. Could it be that the fish grew wings and flew away on its own? Was that not nonsense? His gaze swept over every corner and every person, inch by inch. Suddenly, when he glanced at the red lunar beast, it subconsciously retreated and hid in the corner. Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat, and he strode toward the red lunar beast. The red lunar beast trembled in fear, and it retreated step by step. Everyone immediately noticed this strange scene, and even Bai jumped out and sat on the red lunar beast's back. It scratched its back with its claws and asked, "Why are you running? Master won't eat you." The red lunar beast had a complicated look in its eyes, and it was trembling. Tang Zheng asked loudly, "Yeah, I'll be lenient if you confess, but I'll be strict if you resist. Did you eat those fish?" The red lunar beast howled, and it wanted to shake its head to deny it. However, when it looked at Tang Zheng, it stopped and turned back into its head. Everyone was shocked, but they also realized that the red lunar beast was the thief who stole the fish. Tang Zheng smirked. The red lunar beast lived in the deep sea all year round, and it probably ate fishes and prawns. Tang Zheng had forgotten about that, so he did not feed it any food. But it had always been like that, and it rarely ate anything. He did not expect the red lunar beast to be a foodie, and it ate those fishes secretly in the middle of the night, and was shocked when the culprit came out of the water, and she was furious. She rushed over and shouted, "How could you eat my fish? You're so pitiful." The red lunar beast felt wronged. It had been eating fish all its life. Who told it that it could not eat fish? It was not something valuable. However, looking at the furious the red lunar beast chose to retreat. It's just a few fishes, right? What's the big deal? Bai suddenly raised its head and shouted at, and to protect the red lunar beast, and stopped and looked at Tang Zheng pitifully. "Those are my favorite fishes," she felt wronged. Looking at her, Tang Zheng's head went soft. Like magic, a pearl necklace appeared in his hand. "This is for you. Take it as my compensation for your fish." N's wronged voice suddenly stopped. She immediately took the necklace, and her worry turned into joy. She cheered. "This is the first gift you've given me. I'm so happy." At that moment, she threw the matter of the fish to the back of her mind. "Help me put it on." Tang Zheng could not persuade her, so he could only put the necklace on for her. She turned around and asked, "How is it? Is it pretty?" Chapter 10:14. Favoring one over another was a taboo, so Tang Jing naturally had to do his best to remedy the situation. Luckily, he had a lot of jewels, so he took out a few and gave them to everyone, appeasing the crowd, and pouted unhappily, but there was nothing she could do. However, she kept comforting herself that he was the first to give her a present, and the others were just supplementary gifts. Only then was she satisfied and happy. Tang Jing and the Empyrean Fairy once again went to the backyard and activated the teleportation circle. The two of them, Xiao Bai and the Scarlet Lunar Beast, disappeared into thin air. Luckily, the walls of the backyard were tall, and there were big trees blocking the view, so no one saw this scene. Otherwise, they would have been scared out of their wits. The scene in front of them changed, and they appeared on an island. The sea breeze blew, making them feel relaxed and happy. The Empyrean Fairy looked around and said, "This is your base?" As soon as she finished speaking, a huge black shadow flew over from the sky and dove down. The crackling sound of lightning could be heard. Thundercloud Beast. The Empyrean Fairy looked up and recognized it. A ball of lightning suddenly formed in the sky, but when she saw who it was, the ball of lightning disappeared in the air. The Thundercloud Beast quickly shrank and flew to Tang Jing's side and stopped. "Little Black, how are you?" Xiao Bai excitedly called out to the Thundercloud Beast, as if he was reuniting with an old friend. The Scarlet Lunar Beast growled in a low voice, full of hostility towards the Thundercloud Beast. "You can talk." The Thundercloud Beast looked at Xiao Bai in shock. "Of course. In the future, you can listen to my orders just like little Yu. Little White swaggered as if he was giving orders. He was full of heroism and had the aura of a leader. The Thundercloud Beast looked at the Scarlet Lunar Beast and asked, "What is it?" "It's called Little Yu, the Scarlet Lunar Beast." Scarlet Lunar Beast? The Thundercloud Beast remembered this name for the first time. Looking at these little animals, the Empyrean Fairy joked, "Are you going to become a zoo?" Thundercloud Beast, Qian Sui Gui, Red Moon Beast, and the mysterious Xiao Bai. "Hee, these are just a few animals. How is this a zoo?" As he spoke, the elder led the disciples of the witch tribe over quickly. Sensing the mana fluctuations here, he guessed that it must be the arrival of the Lord Emissary. "Greetings, Lord Envoy." Everyone bowed. "There's no need to be so polite. Elder, take us to the Holy Land." Tang Jing went straight to the point. It had only been a few days, but the great emissary had returned and headed straight for the Holy Land. He had even brought along an outsider like the Empyrean Fairy. This had surprised the elders, and they could not help but speculate about the great emissary's true intentions. However, when he saw the Scarlet Lunar Beast, he could not help but gasp in shock. Although little Yu was small in size, the elder and the others recognized her at a glance. The elder hurriedly asked, "Lord Emissary, what is going on?" Tang Jing waved his hand, indicating for everyone to calm down, and said, "I came here specifically for it. Let's talk about it after we get to the Holy Land." "Yes, Lord Emissary, please." The elder was uneasy. His gaze continued to sweep across little Yu's body, causing her to bare her teeth and stare fiercely at the elder. The Holy Land. The cultivators and the other disciples of the witch tribe had all been dismissed, leaving only Tang Jing, the other two, and the three beasts. When they saw the crystal, Xiao Bai and little Yu were confused. They did not know the purpose of this trip, nor did they know that there was a Scarlet Lunar Beast sealed in it. The Empyrean Fairy also looked at the huge crystal curiously. The surging energy coming from it was so clear that it made her feel excited. With just one look, she could determine the value of this crystal. "Is it inside?" The Empyrean Fairy pointed at the crystal and asked. Tang Jing nodded his head and confidently walked over. He placed both of his palms on the crystal and activated his martial arts, causing a surge of energy to flow from the crystal into his body. Immediately, the crystal gradually became transparent and a figure became clearer. The Empyrean Fairy looked at this scene in shock. When she saw the tall Scarlet Lunar Beast, her eyes lit up. It was indeed a genuine Scarlet Lunar Beast. Little Yu was originally absent-minded with her head lowered. However, When she saw the scarlet lunar beast in the crystal, her eyes immediately widened, and she stared at it in shock. Ah, there's a scarlet lunar beast in here too. Little Yu, it's the same kind as you. Xiaobai shouted in shock. Little Yu acted as if she did not hear him and walked towards the crystal. Xiaobai wanted to stop her, but was stopped by Tang Zheng in time. Everyone's eyes were glued to this scene. The elder's heart beat wildly. Where did the Lord Emissary find this strange beast? What would happen next? Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy did not know what would happen next, but they were looking forward to it. Time seemed to have stopped, and space seemed to have stopped. Little Yu walked in front of the crystal and extended her claws to touch the crystal. An ice-cold sensation came over, and its eyes changed in an instant. A strange color bloomed in its pupils. However, all of this ended very quickly. The light in little Yu's eyes gradually disappeared, replaced by disappointment. She put down her claws dejectedly. All of this was in vain. The sealed scarlet lunar beast did not change at all. Although both parties were of the same species, little Yu did not cause any reaction at all. Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy looked at each other and could not hide the disappointment in each other's eyes. They muttered, "It seems that we were too optimistic." There was no reaction or change at all. The Empyrean Fairy sighed and shook her head. The elder saw this and asked curiously, "Lord Emissary, what is going on?" "Its name is the Scarlet Lunar Beast. It is a creature from the outer sky. We want to know about the outer sky from them, but little Yu does not know anything. So, we want to see if something will happen when it meets its kind. Then, it can give us some information," Tang Zheng said. The elder suddenly understood. He looked at the two Scarlet Lunar Beasts and said, "It seems that this method will not work." Xiaobai heard this and said disapprovingly, "Master, what's so difficult about this? Let me help you break this thing." Just as he finished speaking, a white figure leaped out. With a bang, a small claw hit the crystal. With a rumbling sound, the crystal shook violently, but did not shatter. Xiaobai looked at this scene in disbelief. It knew the power of this attack very well, but it could not hurt the crystal at all. "Damn it! Xiaobai, don't mess around." Tang Zheng tried to stop it, but before he could finish, his eyes widened. He looked at the crystal in disbelief and saw the scarlet lunar beast move. Its eyes shone brightly as it tried to touch Xiaobai. The scarlet lunar beast had never moved before. It was as if it was a statue. This was the first time. "Ah, it's alive." Xiaobai was not afraid. Instead, he was surprised to see the scarlet lunar beast's reaction. However, the scarlet lunar beast could not really touch Xiaobai because of the crystal. Its eyes were filled with surprise and respect as it stared at Xiaobai. Xiaobai also stared at it with his round eyes. The scarlet lunar beast gradually lowered its head under Xiaobai's gaze. In the end, it even crawled on the ground with its front legs as if it was kowtowing. Xiaobai looked at this scene blankly. He turned his head and asked Tang Zheng, "Master, what is it doing?" Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy were shocked. Only the elder's reaction was less. In his mind, Xiaobai was the sorcerer tribe's sacred beast and had a noble status. It was only right for the scarlet lunar beast to kowtow to him. However, Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy thought more. The scarlet lunar beast was not an ordinary creature. It was a creature from beyond the heavens. Why would it kowtow to a sorcerer tribe's sacred beast in the human world? There were too many unsolved mysteries. Even little Yu could not trigger its reaction. However, Xiaobai's casual actions could trigger such a huge reaction from it. It was too bizarre. Tang Zheng rushed over and asked, "Xiaobai, try to recall. Do you remember its existence?" Xiaobai tilted his head. He did not seem to understand what Tang Zheng meant. After thinking for a long time, he shook his head blankly. "No, I have never seen it before." "Master, why is it moving?" "It was alive in the first place. I used to think that it couldn't move, but now it seems that it disdains to move." Even little Yu couldn't elicit a reaction from it. "On the contrary, you are a pleasant surprise." "Then what is it doing?" Xiaobai asked suspiciously. Tang Zheng looked deeply at the scarlet lunar beast. He realized that it was still crawling with its head on its front legs. It was very respectful. He said thoughtfully, "It is kowtowing to you." It seems that it knows you. I have never seen it before. How would it know me? Xiaobai was confused. He could not figure out the complicated inside story. It does not know you. However, it definitely knows your kind. Oh, I see. Master, didn't you always want to know my origin? Won't everything be revealed if you let it out? Tang Jing shook his head, his expression darkened, and said, It's not as easy as you say. You tried it just now. This spar is very sturdy. It can't be broken at all. You can only let it out after absorbing all the energy of this spar. Xiao Bai was very disappointed. That is so troublesome. Doesn't that mean we won't be able to find the answer for now? Tang Jing laughed instead. Even so, we are still one step closer to the answer. This Scarlet Moon beast knows your origin. So as long as we work hard to absorb all the energy in this crystal, won't everything come to light? Xiao Bai's eyes lit up. He nodded and said, Master's right. Xiao Bai also wants to know his origin. Tang Jing, I have an idea. Suddenly, the Empyrean fairy said. Tang Jing turned his head. What idea? Since this Scarlet Lunar Beast and Xianyin can seal themselves, you can release Xianyin and see if they will react to each other. Tang Jing's eyes flashed. Smart. This was a great idea. Since they both came from the sky beyond heaven and were still alive, he wondered how they would react to each other. Therefore, he used his mind to summon the crystal that sealed Xianyin. The Scarlet Lunar Beast seemed to have sensed something. It raised its head and looked at the crystal in front of it. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.